we've talked about it before. The hunting season is short, especially when we talk about bow season. It's,
That said, I'm not going to this wedding.
All right.
Sorry, what were you saying?
You told me. I'm done.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Deer Grow.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and Deer Grow is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get Deer Grow back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. Mm-hmm. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with Deer Grow and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out Deer Grow at deergrow.com. And we're back.
Hey,
HUNTR Podcast, episode 139.
As always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you like to listen.
Nick is back.
I'm back.
Back in the house, looking tan.
Tan as ever, dude. I said tan AF.
Yeah, glad to be back, boys.
Looking pogue.
Boys, pogue life.
Pogue life, yeah. Also, Corey Horn in the house. We got a full deck today.
Yeah, unplanned, uncoordinated, just here we go.
Yeah. So, Nick, how was Charleston?
It was great. It was great. It was hot.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time at the beach.
Yeah.
Ate some good food, drank some good drinks.
Yeah.
Saw some live music.
Living the Southern life.
Yeah. Good times.
And you're back to the north.
Yeah. Feels good to be back in the mountains.
Yeah.
The air, it's much more refreshing.
We were pretty smoky yesterday, actually.
Yeah, it has been. I keep hoping for sunny days, and it's like, hazy.
Yeah, it's hazy. It's hazy. It does feel good. Jared and I were in the Midwest last week, and we'll get into it, but we basically died 2 or 3 times out in the heat out there.
He was saying it was like 105.
Oh, dude, at least 110, 115.
I don't think it's possible for people to understand.
I mean, we got back to the hotel on Thursday night, I think, and I was like, hey, dude, I don't want to scare you, but my heart rate was through the roof multiple times. And Jared's like, yeah, dude, I think I had a heart attack twice.
I don't want to say anything, but I thought I was going to die.
I mean, that was some extreme
shit. It's when you open the door and it's just hit you in the face, and you're like, this is not safe.
I mean, it literally looked like, and that was the difference between Kansas and Illinois is in Illinois, it looked like we were just jumped in a swimming pool, twice. We ended up changing one time to go eat
within 15 minutes. It's if you go from dry to totally soaked for the rest of the day.
I felt like I pissed myself just constantly through the day.
Yeah,
it's just crotch was wet. We drove around for 2 hours, and it still maybe I was peeing. I just lost control at that point.
Out of my
you didn't have any water to pee out at that point.
We did.
We were on it with the water. I mean, we drank 2 full cases and 6 Gatorades a day.
Yeah, I mean, we were hydrated as possible. It still was
so many minerals coming out of my pores. At one point I was chafing pretty hard. The nips were. Good thing it wasn't a white shirt. I'd be bleeding.
Yeah, I thought he was lactating. It just was sweat pouring out.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it was hot. But then last night I was spraying and fertilizing behind the house. It was 78 degrees. I'm like, holy shit, I need a sweatshirt or something.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. We were also broadcasting into 6 foot tall stuff. So I mean, it was 105 degrees on top of here's a 5 foot wall to go trunch through.
The easiest.
We broadcast how many? Was it 6 acres of food plot?
6 acres.
And on top of all of the primary seed that we put down, which have been clover, brassicas, or alfalfa on one of them, we put rye over every. So we basically planted 12 acres of plots is what we walked.
Yeah, the easiest description was if you ever had to walk through 2 feet of snow and you're just trudging through. That's what that felt like.
With gear.
With gear.
Yeah.
And hot and sweaty.
On top of hanging tree stands. What do we hung? 5 tree stands.
5 tree stands, 8 cameras in Illinois.
Yeah.
Slippery.
Putting in the man hours.
Putting in the man hours. And that was in a day and a half.
Impressive.
Yeah, we did not. It was from the time we started till dark, basically every day. And then Thursday we got back in the vehicle, drove through into northern Missouri, and then we drove from Missouri to Kansas on Friday, and we binged Kansas Friday, and then flew our asses home Saturday morning.
It was a week for sure.
Yeah. got home, I was like, where the fuck am I?
A lot of things have to go right for that all to. I mean, if you went back and recapped every single like interaction and stuff that had to work out for that all to go well, because first of all, I missed my alarm the first day. So like day one, we're supposed to fly out at whatever our flight was 6 o'clock.
And you're normally timely.
I'm usually on it.
I'm usually pulling in, and Jared's door's open. He's coming out. I pulled in. I'm like, it's pretty dark still. Called him a couple times. No answer. And Margie's sleeping. It's early. It's 4 something.
4:30.
And I was like, well, I'm gonna pound on this door. The dogs are gonna bark. And so pound on the door. Dogs go off. I run back to the truck. I wait, and I call him. I said, hey, you up? He's like, I am now.
Yeah. Well, Margie woke me up. I didn't hear the door or the dogs.
Yeah.
I don't know if I didn't set my alarm or I shut it off, like in my slumber. But yeah, I had set my alarm for 4:15, and it was 4:40. That's when I woke up. I was like,
I was outside for 15 minutes.
Yeah. So threw everything together. Fortunately, I had packed everything. Yeah. I was all together. Clothes were laid out.
A little frazzled.
So we did get out of there. Oh, definitely frazzled. But got out of there, made it out in time for, it was the Whitetail Properties, the national meeting, basically. So flew in, went right to that, day of. Did we go to Bass Pro first?
We did.
So we landed, rented our car, which we already had rented. Same place that we went last at the Waits,
Yeah, it sucks.
That Enterprises.
Got a truck. First truck was dead.
But yeah, battery was dead on the truck.
Went to go get it.
Yeah, went to go get it, dead. Had to go back in line, and I'm like, this ridiculous. I said, hey, the truck's dead. She's just like, ah.
Yeah,
I was like,
F my life.
Okay. And I waited for like two other people.
I'm also disgruntled here.
Yeah, she left, went outside. I don't know what she was doing. Came back, and she's like,
it's time for my smoke break.
I'm gonna go out and smoke.
She's like, take K7 or whatever. I go to K7. It's a car. I'm like, do you mean K8? She's like, yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
Take that one.
Yeah, K8.
Took it, and we're out. So yeah, we went to Bass Pro.
Yeah, bought all of their tree stands.
Yeah, all of the muddy tree stands they had. All the muddy tree stands they had, all the sticks that they had.
Yeah. Took a gander at some other stuff. Picked up a saw, like a little pole saw.
Got a pole saw.
Machete, always critical for when hanging cameras during the summer. I prefer a weed whacker, I really do, and I'll go to town on it. But a machete has to.
We went machete, which was
there.
tough because hands were slippery with the old sweat.
There was a couple times there where I could have let go. That'd have been sticking right in that rental car door,
right in the back of my. Jesus.
Yeah, gotta be mindful. Of
yeah,
that.
so we got all those, got all the stands, and then
meeting mode. So basically a day and a half of meetings and stuff, and.
Hit Walmart for some batteries.
Yep.
We ended up, so we got all of that stuff, and then Wednesday morning, pretty early, we bailed and headed up to the new Illinois farm. Which, if you listen to the last podcast, Jared and I are under contract, close to closing here now at this point, on this new Illinois farm.
Went straight to the co-op. Went and met our buddy Jeff at the co-op. Which, dude, if you're not doing that, like if you're in any kind of ag area, farm area, like that's one of the first things you should do is reach out and meet your like local farm office.
Yeah,
they've got
super guys,
a ton of contacts and knowledge about the soil in the area, contacts for if you need things done remotely and stuff. So that was huge for us. We bought all of our seed.
He made custom mixes for us, measured it all out,
mixed it all up for us, made recommendations, pulled up, and it was ready to go. So
we had got our fertilizer there.
You can rent drills from a lot of them.
Yep, we called them the day before to get fertilizer ready for the guy that we had hired. So I think in the last podcast, Jared and I talked. The big thing is like how we're going to manage this farm. A lot of people were asking in the comments on our last.
Yeah, the answer is we don't know. We're gonna figure. We're gonna figure it out.
So the thing is, and we'll get into this food plot strategy that we've been using here a little bit, but in year one, it's like we just have to get this stuff wrangled in. Like a lot of it is CRP, of which if you're not familiar with that program, you can take 10% of a CRP field and put it into a wildlife food plot. So if it's a 10-acre field, you can make a 1 acre food plot.
At least where we're at. I don't know if that's true from state to state, but that's what the local office is telling us.
Yep. So but you're talking about thick, wild, warm season grasses and other things
and some broadleaves coming up in them.
Yep.
Our guy, and kind of to our dismay, when we pulled up, all of the CRP fields have been freshly mowed, like to the ground. So everything that we're this time of year are expecting is 4 to 5 foot tall is, inches, 4 to 5 inches tall.
Yeah.
So whatever, we don't own the property yet. And,
it'll grow back.
It is what it is. And those warm season grasses we're told are, this year are going to just now start to take off. So
Yeah.
I'm still hopeful that those will be several feet tall by the time
Agree.
season starts.
They need a burn. Eventually, they need a burn. There's a lot of thatch down in the bases because he's just been cutting. He hasn't been burning. He's just been cutting, so it just lays down in that. So, anyways, the thought process is like, okay, what do we do? There were 2 plots that we needed actual clearing with. They had brush, some trees down, stuff like that. But the rest of them are just grassy fields. And so our strategy this year, and it's just a matter of time and frankly money, is we needed to spray gly on the plots, kill the grasses. We needed to fertilize, and we just were going to seed right into it. No tillage.
Nuke them and spread them.
Yep, no tillage, no turning the soil over, nothing like that. And so we met a guy, Sam.
Since you mentioned that, I was thinking about even our plots this year. I haven't turned over a whatever you would call it, a section of soil.
Because of the no-tills and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, me either.
At all. I early on, this entire year, I broadcasted all my clover plots right into whatever that was, April, May.
Yep.
Nuked, spread fertilizer, spread seed. They look great.
Yep.
With brassicas, same thing.
Same thing.
Broadcast right into standing weeds. Nuked them, sprayed fertilizer, and then our summer plots I drilled. So I just nuked them and drilled them. Yeah,
and obviously we're not agronomists, but I've been, because of the deer growth side, I've been following along with a lot of what the soil conservation efforts look like, and especially in the Midwest and the plain states and stuff. And I get from a production standpoint turning it over. I'm not trying to put that down or anything, but there's a couple big research projects that have come out of the Midwest and in the Great Plains that shows basically the ability for the soil structure, for nutrients, for the microbes and the biological side of the soil to really perform. And if you look at the soil that's been turned, is constantly you're destructing that physical topsoil, right? You're breaking it up, you're spreading it out, you're exposing it to air, you're exposing new seed beds out. And what it looks like is, there was a graphic that I saw where they had basically a ball of soil that had never been, or it was like 10 years since it had been turned over, right? It's always been no-tilled and things like that. And then they had another one where every year it had been turned over. And they put it in like a big tube of water, basically. And after 10 days, the one that had been constantly turned over was just mud. It was just a mud, cloudy mud ball. The other side, literally the soil was still intact and it was crystal clear underneath it. And it's because that structure of how it's been able to hold together and grow that healthier root system and not erode and everything is because it hasn't been worked every year. It hasn't been destroyed and destructed every year. And I'm not saying don't turn over your plots. This is not that kind of thing, but
erosion is one of the main
huge
reasons that you would consider a no-till method.
The other one in most of the country this year is water conservation. I mean, we're in a drought in Illinois and a lot of Missouri. We were in Ohio and Kentucky even for a while there, is that the moment you turn that over and expose that soil, it's evaporation of the moisture in that soil's gone out the window.
Sure.
So by no-tilling into it, you're conserving a lot of that water. That's why a lot of people are doing cover crops and things like that, is they're trying to keep moisture and organic matter in the soil.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about. Is for us, it's easier. If I can go in and nuke it,
so much
seed it, fertilize it, walk away, and that grass and all those broadleafs just die over top and create this greenhouse effect, and then all my brassica, clover, and small seed grow up. Why not?
That's what you want, yeah. And it's if you have to apply at a 25% higher rate on the seed,
because the germination offset. Yeah. Who cares?
Who cares?
Frankly, most people listening to this are doing 50% over, and they don't even know it anyways.
Yeah, right.
8 pounds per acre is it's lighter than you think.
So the success on it has been, and this is not the first year that we've done some brassica plots in the past, and it's here or there, and it's it's hard to keep consistent notes and stuff, but you're I think that plot turned out pretty well, and so this is the first full-on test. I mean,
do we think it's going to be perfect this year? No. I mean, it's the first time several of these things have been established in 7+ years. Yeah. But do I think we'll have a good plot? Yeah, I do.
So. The only thing I think we're going to maybe face in Illinois is because some of those had been recently cut. I don't
seed and thatch.
Well, that's part of it too. So those are our two challenges, I guess. One is that they were just cut and then we sprayed soon after. We had no choice.
Yeah, so there's less surface area for the glide to cling to.
So I hope that the glide will be as effective as it can be.
It looked like it in some of those places. We saw it nuking pretty quick.
That hadn't been cut.
Mm.
Yeah, that was
Yeah, that's right. That was that
section,
section.
I'm
Do
sure.
you guys document it? Like year over year? Are you guys documenting what you're doing where? I
all
mean, I
in
know
here.
that, at this point with how many projects you have going on and
I've got I've got pictures on my phone
Pictures, yeah.
that I go back and I look and say, okay, and late August, what that food plot, oh, wow, look, it didn't look as far as I thought it was, so I'm not worried this year based on how it looks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's really photo documentation.
Dude, I'll say this too, just as like while we're on the food plot thing, I'm really enjoying get back to Clover as a staple. I kind of
neglected it
and here's,
for a while.
Here's like kind of why is because so many times these food plots don't. Well, there's a lot of reasons why, and we don't have to go all the way into it. But I'm because of these things we're talking about right now, small seed is a huge advantage.
Huge
to be able to broadcast into thatch and stuff and still have a successful plot. So that's one. The other is like a cereal grain. It seems like you can just continually apply it. It's like if you plant a clover plot and it's like it doesn't look great,
just seed over it,
assess it, address it. You're like, okay, there's broadleafs, there's there's grasses, and we didn't get as much germination as we want. Okay, so hit it with butirac and clethodim and just put more seed down.
Yep.
Just broadcast more seed.
Yep.
And it's like over time, the plot will develop, and it's not like it's success or fail. From the one time, it's like I can keep applying seed. I can keep
5+
treating.
years, you can maintain those clover plots with just chemicals and mowing.
And it's hard to wrap your mind around a full like clover maintenance or even a cereal grain maintenance thing. And brassicas are maybe a little more timely. That's more of a brassica into saving with ride or a cereal grain type of a thing. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the forgiveness that those small seed perennial plots give you.
And we don't have the opportunity necessarily to do it. Well, we could call our food plot guy up, but we don't have necessarily the opportunity to do it in Illinois. But like in Kentucky, I put clover and brassica and some alfalfa out on a lot of my plots out there into same situation. High grass, nuked it, seeded into it, fertilized it, let it go. If I come back like this weekend, I'm going to check it out. If there's some spotty stuff, that's when I'll put cereal grains over top to save those spotty areas and stuff. Yeah. But I mean, it's saved me a ton of time because literally all I need is my sprayer from Gly and Deer Grow, and I need my cone spreader from fertilizer, and then we use our Earthway bag seeders.
Can't beat them.
I just got a brand new one in the mail yesterday. She's crisp.
Yeah, that's nice.
She's crisp. But that's what we use, and I mean, anybody can do that. Like, what's funny is like I remember it's probably 5-6 years ago. There was a big like push on the poor man's plots. Like, oh, let's do. I think maybe Winky was kind of one of those guys. He was. Poor man's plots, like get the rake out, burn it. It's like you don't have to do any of that. You just go out there and glide the hell out of it, spread the seed, fertilize and Deer Grow or whatever, and then it'll grow.
Yeah. Well, for some reason, we all had that impression that like the soil has to be worked.
Clean. It has to be like a clean surface to grow. It's not the case.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. There may be some advantage to having like a worked soil. I don't know, frankly.
Well, from a root system and the ease of it to like, yeah, absolutely. But it's also how hard pans form. Working that 6 to 10 inches of topsoil and never working anything underneath. That's how that hard pan forms, and basically no root systems can get deeper there. It's also, I think, to me, part of it's like a mowing system where it's like people love to mow because it looks great, right? Think of like a freshly tilled field that you just seeded, like it looks beautiful. And the germination happens and you can see it clearly.
There has to be some benefit to turning soil from, like you're saying, the roots, because there's, all the farmers still do. It's like, It's not like farmers are converting to a no-till. Like they obviously know about it.
Yeah.
There's still a reason that
I think it's a roots. It's probably still like the amount of water that can get down into there. It's probably all around the root system though. We're not farmers. So
yeah. And maybe I would think it's corn over beans maybe requires more of a
Well, as I say, and it's also bed. The, what do they call it? Like the mounding in the corn. I watched something just here recently. I can't remember. I won't even try to attempt at what they said, but they talked about the specific mounding for corn and why it was really important. Somebody's going to comment on it. Great. Hopefully they're a farmer.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah, tell us all. But think of that. And that's where the corn planters come in with their very accurate and precise dropping of those seeds and spacing of the seeds. Whereas on a bean standpoint, I think all farmers now are no-tilling beans.
Not where we're at. I mean, they're the same thing.
They're using a bean. See, I see a lot of farmers in my area no-tilling beans.
It could be some of both. It's possible.
I don't see them turning soil for beans.
It honestly may just be if they've made the investment to buy a drill or not.
I mean, that time cost alone, right? Like you were saying,
huge
to actually go through that and do that, and then just the OpEx to carry it.
Yep,
it is impressive how quickly some of those giant drills or discs. It's nothing.
Yeah,
they'll go out and nuke it and turn that whole thing over in half an hour.
Yep,
it's pretty impressive.
Yep, but then they still have to come back and plant it versus I nuked it and now I'm just drilling through it.
Yeah, you're done.
So I mean, there's and no offense to the farmers out there. I mean, there is a big push around the farmers to try to do more no-till type thing for soil conservation and erosion and everything else that comes into it. For whatever reason, corn obviously needs that mound furrow type, furrow thing to go through. So,
but you can no-till corn. You're just saying it's because of
it doesn't sound like many people no-till corn. I did this year and it was a cluster, but
I was gonna say, how does it work on even on the back end of harvesting, right? So if you actually go and it's not line, if it's not mapped, does it matter?
Well, the drill will still drop it in a line, and it definitely matters. Combines are all built for rows, so those forks, it's just like a comb running through corn rows.
Yeah, like my no-till still planted in rows. In fact, I'm excited to see where I'm at because this is kind of like the final push here on the corn for growth. Everything's tasseled out now; they're putting on the actual ears. But if you go back, and I don't know how many podcasts ago it was, Nick, 10, 15 podcasts ago, like I was like, Jesus, like my corn looks like shit. I put a lot of time and money into this thing, and now I've got 8+ foot corn with ears. Like it looks like I planted a cornfield.
What's the difference?
The difference was my no-till. My no-till is not as a precise planter as a corn planter. A corn planter literally programs in and drops the seed X spaces every X inches on it. Mine doesn't have the precise seed cups in it. So it's cranking, like I can set the spacing, but it's cranking out corn inconsistently. So like I might have 6 inches between this one, 2 inches, 10 inches, like it's inconsistent.
That's a mess, yeah.
So that's where the row side of things, like Jared's saying, the rows are there. But the distance in between, I mean, if you look at most cornfields, they're like, I don't know, 4 inches or something, like in between the actual corn stalks.
More than that.
Is it?
Yeah.
6?
It's like a foot.
No. In between the actual corn in a row.
Oh, yeah.
It's tight.
Yeah, tighter.
Yeah. Whereas like in some of mine, it's like 12, 24. Like it's super inconsistent. Some of it could be in germination too, but super inconsistent on that.
It's kind of interesting. Like I'm sure guys have like talk about accessing through a cornfield.
Yep.
Like there's nothing worse than in October trying to like beat the brush like through the middle of a cornfield.
Oh no, dude.
I'm curious if there's like a preferred method for, like this was the first year that I tried to like put some lines in. I ended up just kicking it with my boot. Like I thought,
corn?
I was like, what's the method? Is it a machete? Is it a weed whacker?
That's what I've been thinking.
Is it? And ultimately, it just ended up being kicking it.
Just walking through.
kicking it and
here you can see
rooting it up. I did that like a month ago.
At one point in time, that stuff was like 2 feet tall. Now it's like 6+. So like it did what it was supposed to do.
That's what it does. Yeah,
now
it's taller.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't put a lot of money into fertilizer to get that going. I've sprayed it.
That's a $30,000 food plant.
Yeah, I've sprayed it a lot with. I sprayed it with Gly originally, and then I
brought in grown corn plants and planted
just
them.
hand planted
They're all
every one of them.
transplants.
Yeah, it was freaking. It was a really
fake corn stalks.
I went into a farmer's field and dug them up and buried.
I won't say that I won't do corn again, but I will for sure consider.
Well, now you know
the value. Yeah.
It was a good learning experience.
Yeah. The hard part this year, and it kind of tying in with Illinois, is like my new Kentucky farm as well as Illinois is like we had to establish everything for the first time this year, which is super time consuming. So in Illinois, the one bottom field we put 2 acres of alfalfa in. Well, we won't have to plant that next year, right? We'll just maintain it, and that alfalfa will be productive next year, the year after. So it's in a lot of cases, it's the first year of establishment. There's so much time, effort into it. But then once you get, and this is tying into your clover side of things, perennials, once they're established, it's just maintaining them, right? Think about if you have 10 acres of food plots, every year you have to do 10 acres of food plots, a lot of time and money and effort. Whereas if half of those are perennials, you just have to maintain them and then you plant the new 5 acres. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot more time efficient and cost efficient.
Yeah. And you do need annuals. I mean, for like
tonnage.
For tonnage and for those, your hard winter months and stuff.
Yep.
It's, yes, rye is there, but if you're in an area that gets any snowfall, which is fewer and fewer places, frankly.
Seems like it. Grain above the snow is important.
Right.
Yep.
So standing beans, standing corn.
Yep.
Brassicas are a good option. Ice,
Yep.
ice can be an issue there, but
Yeah, but for most of the year, your perennials are 9-month producers, basically.
yeah.
Tying big circle there, but tying back into your clover discussion, like I think you and I are both leaning more towards clover and even some alfalfa in cases as perennial options.
Small seed perennials are just should be a staple. Not that it has to be, not a majority of your acreage. The number that I'm using as a rule of thumb, so this is for my farm, but I think it's pretty applicable. Anything less than an acre, it's clover or another browse,
simply because of the pressure.
Browse tolerant perennial. So because of the browse pressure. Anything over than that is likely going to be a brassica plot.
Yep.
Unless it's big enough to be a destination,
like a bean.
In which case it's a grain. Yeah, all that I think is tied. That just makes sense because your smaller plots are going to get browsed the hardest, and your biggest ones are going to be,
used the most long term, probably.
Right. So that's how I have ours, and that's what we did in Illinois. Is the biggest ones get grain. The reason is because you can't, like in Illinois, I don't even know if a 3-acre bean field will make it.
We have a 7-acre bean field that's standing on the property, and I mean it's getting pounded.
Yeah.
In fact, we came across one in Kansas. That bean field was 70 acres?
Kind of amazing.
It was the most browsed bean field. And I'm not talking about the edge. I'm talking about you looked across it and it was clean cut the whole way across the bean field.
Pretty amazing.
This is the craziest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. How you look at a bean field and you can see, they're browsing this line really hard. The whole field looked like it was
the whole top.
I think it was a 70-acre field. Mm-hmm. The whole thing. And you could see there was 1 or 2 areas that hadn't been hit when you could see the leaves still. And you're like, that's
weird.
Yeah,
it was like a pocket.
Yeah.
Your mower guy came through and was just like,
no shit, man. Yeah, just cut the top off like hedges.
Just put it on the ground for him. It's fine.
So yeah, it's. I think that's a big piece. And again, we don't know. Rumor is in the area there are a ton of deer, and that we'll have a lot. We'll have a pretty big challenge.
Well, we got a picture last night of. I think it's a big buck.
It's a teaser. It's like half
of a
an
beam
antler
sticking in there.
And a nose.
Yes. Yeah, it looks good. We do have some we've quickly been able to identify that the quality of the genetics in the area are good. Like we've got a couple 3-year-old 10 points that are looking really good. This deer is kind of a mystery in a new area. I know. I see what you're talking about.
Look at where his beam is at in relation to his nose. So it's his nose.
Is he missing the G2 from that shot?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a big space there.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's what we think it is, it's a 160-inch deer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not a mega, but that's a 160-inch 10 point, I bet.
Yeah. It's cool. That's in a new plot that we're kind of looking at here. Sorry, you can't see the picture. Can't know where it is. But yeah, so our goal in Illinois was to simply be able to establish year one, have food, and make it more, make it easier to maintain in the future. So if we establish this well in year one, we can go back out in year 2 and it's like, oh, this plot's already established. We just need to kill the weeds and we can do the same process again. Broadcast, fertilize, it's done.
Front load the time for the long-term investment.
Yeah.
Especially when it's
once
only
you cut these pieces out of what's been essentially not used or established for many years, it's much easier to establish it in subsequent years. Do I think that it'll be the best quality this year? No. But it'll be better each year until eventually it's like we're doing it like our home plots, to where we can easily make sure that these things are producing the highest tonnage and quality every year. Now, the one thing that is a big question, because I'm not in it, you're in better soil than I am, but this is like primo soil. Again, not an agronomist, I don't know. According to a lot of the people we've talked to, even from Iowa and Illinois, and what people are getting for cash rents and CRP, we are in some of the best soil in the United States in that area. So I don't know, maybe this thing grows amazing because like I grow great brassica plots in shit soil in Pennsylvania, so I don't know.
It should grow well. It's just going to come down to seed to soil contact and how good of a kill we got on some of those cut plots. Yeah, otherwise I'm really confident that they'll do well.
It makes it easier to change it out later too, knowing that soil's good, because I mean, you guys have been so dynamic on the plots over the years where you start getting in those woods and you're sitting and you realize like, actually I want something different here.
Yeah, and it's a challenge because of timber and or soil quality or what terrain, right? I mean, this is pure farm country and high quality soil, which is why we actually made the decision in that one big plot to go after alfalfa, because alfalfa is a tough plant to establish. You need really high quality soil for it. You need to be able to have a plan for maintenance around it. But
we have a saving grace too. We put rye on everything.
Yeah, there's a lot
too
of
much.
There's
so
a lot
like
of
if nothing else. We're gonna have rye.
Yeah, there's a lot of alfalfa around us as it is. So that kind of was like, oh, okay, everybody else can grow it right here. Like we can grow it right here. Whereas if you look around this area,
I've never planted alfalfa. That's my first time. I didn't even know what the seed looked like.
Yeah, it's a legume, just like clover. So same thing. Like if we end up having broadleafs and grasses in it, we treat it the same way we would treat clover.
Cool.
So which. We didn't put clover in that. We just did rye and alfalfa. Yep. So typically in my cases, like I did some clover on the new Kentucky farm, which is not nearly as good a soil. I seeded in annual clover in the alfalfa to give me some cover because it's going to be slow. The alfalfa is going to be much slower to establish. In the high quality soil, I don't know. I mean, they basically didn't say we need to do it. They were just like, put the rye in it, you'll be fine.
I mean, we'll see. That was last... what's today, Thursday? It was last Wednesday, Thursday. We were getting all that stuff in. So we're week out. We've got cameras on some of the plots, so we're seeing them start to die down. And
we got a good rain on Friday when we left.
Oh, perfectly timed too.
Yep, and looks like we might have another good one coming here at the end of this weekend coming up.
Yeah.
So I mean that's, it's all kind of luck and
full on plot mode, dude.
Yeah.
And, the inventory lists are starting to come together a little bit too. I mean, it's who knows? It's early August, but we've got plenty of bucks showing up all across the board.
You've got a lot of good bucks showing up in Ohio.
I know you do too. You just got to get some cameras running.
Yeah, I have like no camera. I have like one camera in Ohio right now. Yeah, I'm gonna get out there next week,
dude. I'm struggling with aging some of these things right now.
Me too.
I really.
I've gone back and forth on a lot of them. Or like that one I sent you this morning from Kentucky. I've been watching. I'm like, I think he's 4, but if you look at last year, it's like, kind of looks 2 low.
I'd almost guarantee you he was 2 last year, but I'd almost guarantee you he's 4 this year.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm missing, and that's the hardest jump, or the one we deal with the most frequently.
2 to 3.
Yeah, because it's like they can be 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds, and it's like I know they're there, but I'm not paying them that much attention. But then the next year comes, and you're forced to make a decision. You're like, okay, if we're shooting 4-year-olds, is this a 3 or 4-year-old?
Right.
And then you look back, and you're like, well, I thought he was 3, but I could definitely see where he might have been 2. And I'm like, I don't know, dude. This time of year is so tough.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're like, that's a big buck, shoot him. Like if you're happy with him, kill him. But if you're trying to get that deer to maturity, that's the question. Because that's what I said. Is like I really hope like a defined 5-year-old shows up, so I don't have to pay attention to that deer.
Yeah.
Otherwise it's like, well, if that's the 4-year-old, if that's the biggest, baddest buck on this property, that's what I need to hunt.
You almost have to walk it back every time. It's like it's like, okay, now this deer's of size here. Let me look back at what I had and try to figure him out.
Historically, you've been really good at that. I mean,
I like to think so. I mean, I don't have proof. You
have a big history to go back to.
Yeah. History
that
is
photo
the
history
the
is
way to
insane
do it.
because of how many cameras are out there too.
Yeah.
We catch them all over the property.
The best way for sure. I mean, if I have like, there's some that I can almost say with like 100% certainty, like that deer I think is a booner this year. I can almost guarantee you he was a 3-year-old last year.
There's other deer you have where, we'll look at it and be like, he could be 3 this year. And then we go back and it's like, well, there's no way he was 2 last year. So he had to have been 3 last year. It means he has to be 4 this year.
Yeah. And more often than not, it's like they make substantial jumps where it's like, well, I thought he was 3 last year, just like kind of a crappy one.
Yeah. Well, that Kentucky deer this morning, like let's hypothetically say that was a 3-year-old deer.
Like
we're considering 2. He's made a giant jump to 4. I mean, he's a high 40s 9 point, and last year he was 110 inch, barely an 8 point. Same deer for sure. It's just he added 30 plus inches.
Yeah, and yet you're trying to put stock in like which one you're more confident in. Like, so that one there, it's like I look at that deer last year, yours, and I'm like,
and he ran with some other deer I thought were 2.
And I would look at it and say that's definitely a 2-year-old. Like there has to be.
And then I showed you the deer this morning, and it's like he puts everything back into like what? Like I don't know.
So like as of today, August whatever 2nd or 3rd, on my deer, on any judgment that I'm trying to make, I feel like I have to err on what the fall time frame, like because that's when I'm confident in an aging.
Yeah, the summer aging's almost, unless it's like a mature buck, it's really really tough.
Even the mature bucks are tough. Dude, I see some deer that very well could be 5-6 right now that I'd be like, I don't know, he's 3 or 4.
Yeah.
In the summer, like you just don't know. Like they just look totally different.
There's a cool side by side drifting around. You ever see that deer? It's got like one eye and like it's got like a big spike on one side, and they do a side by side comparison of summer and November.
I don't know.
You remember seeing that? We'll have to look it up at some point, Nick. But it's a classic like side by side. It's just you could tell. I mean, obviously it's a unique rack. It's got like 4 on one side and kind of like a messed up other side. And in the summer, it looks like he's staring at you as you're like 2, 3-year-old. And then the next one, he looks like a freaking Brahma bull.
Yeah.
And you're like, how's that 3 months from now?
Yeah.
Like it just blows your mind what this deer does in 3 months.
Yeah. You're almost better just not to try. Just wait until they shed velvet and they start showing up on scrapes.
Problem in Kentucky is like September 2nd, I could shoot that deer.
Right.
And he ain't going to look much different than he does right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. And yeah, I would rather err on the side of caution or let like the kids shoot that deer or whatever than me shoot it and feel like, oh man, like he was a 3-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the choice, just if you're unsure, let him walk. But I mean, how many of us do? I mean,
I don't. Right now, he's the best buck I have on that property, so it's like he's at the top.
Right.
Right. So yeah, and it's but I was talking to the neighbors in Ohio yesterday, and we were talking about some deer in northern Ohio, and between now and 15th of October is one of my favorite times in terms of the number of new bucks that start to show up. Like these deer, we talked about it in Illinois. These deer are moving like not far at all. Bed, food, water, bed. Like it's this small circle that they're making. They're not exploring very far. And you probably could see that. Like on a 200-acre farm, I'll have cameras all over that thing, and I see the deer at like 1, maybe 2 cameras, but nowhere else on the farm. They're just not moving. Over the next 4 to 6 weeks, these deer start to really spread out, and then food starts to change. We're not too far from beans turning, acorns starting to drop. Like all of a sudden, there's a lot of things. Bachelor groups break up because of testosterone. So much happens in the next 6 weeks that there are properties I think we're learning that it's like we won't have deer in the summer here, or maybe we'll have 1 or 2 home bodies, buck-wise. And then, but as soon as mid-September comes, boom, here they all come.
There's just no urgency to like put them in front of your cameras. Like they're so content this time of year with, just staying in their, whatever they're browsing on during the day and stuff. And then there's just, it's not like they have to go check scrapes. It's not like they care that much about your mineral. I mean, yes, they're going to come in, but the reality is like if you're in a bait state or a state that allows mineral, like there's probably way more mineral sites than you think.
Sure. And if you're droughty,
especially if you're in cow country, they're hitting that stuff too. So.
Yeah. If you're droughty, they're not on your mineral much. They don't need it.
Yeah. So, I mean, dude, what's better than hunting season? That's when the resources start to dry up and they start to transition into the things that you've set up for them. And
yeah, so back on our Illinois place, the one thing that we're kind of dealing with, I mean, we've been out there, cameras out for a week. We've got some really nice 3-year-olds on camera, one real tote of a 3-year-old on the camera. This deer that, I don't know, looks good, not sure. The big thing that we have out there is like, if you look at the landscape, there's cover everywhere. I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of acres of standing corn around us right now. A few months from now, it's gone. And I think that's where, like, even I can't fathom what that looks like right now. Because if I look at it, there's cover everywhere. Like, those deer are laying in a cornfield next to a bean field. They get up, they go into the bean field, they go back into the cornfield. Like, that's what they're doing. A few months from now, all this stuff starts to turn, things start to get harvested, and it becomes, like, no cover. Like, corridors. And this farm that we've purchased is mostly cover. It's more cover than it is food, which is a rarity in the area that we're in for Illinois, and most of it's food with a little bit of cover. So it's kind of a patient game here, in that, like, I'm sure we're going to see some bucks show up here over the next few weeks. That's like, oh, that's a good buck. But until a lot of that cover starts to diminish around you, you're not going to see them as frequently as you will at that point in time.
That's exciting. It's like a whole new landscape when you go out. As soon as they start taking off.
It's really hard to visualize, Corey, because it's so dominant out there. Like when we're driving around in the evenings, like when we're looking for deer and stuff, it's just like cornfield. Okay, there's a small bean field.
It's ag as far as you can see.
And then to imagine that, like, just being nothing, like just gone. It's like, where the hell are these deer going to be?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty easy to see where they're going to be.
And I think that's why, kind of going back to these food plots, talking about pressure, is it seems like these deer really pile into the cover that's remaining when the corn especially comes off. Beans not so much, but when the corn comes off, these deer have got to pile into the cover that is more permanent and existing. And so, if you have a acre brassica plot and that's the only plot you have, it's going to get mowed. It's going to be gone real fast.
Yeah. I think some people probably have a misconception about, like, well, I'm in farm country. I've heard you say this, about my farm, and we figured it out together over time.
Because you have a lot of food.
Yeah, but it's like the reality is, like, it's gone. By the time, see, like at our farm in Ohio, there's a lot of oaks, so we have a food source that extends, past. So those beans get cut. Usually it's mid to end of September, into mid-October maybe.
For beans,
and they typically come off first. And then our corn in Ohio, again, is coming off no later than end of November.
Which is interesting because
just later than Illinois.
In Kansas, they cut the corn first. Corn comes off first, then beans come off.
Interesting.
And I don't know about our area of Illinois yet. It sounded like maybe end of September, corn's coming off. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. Yeah, so, I mean, we're in a pretty good place. I mean, the next few weeks, we need rain. We'll see where things...
Let's go. Let's fast forward. I'm starting to can look at some of these weddings I've agreed to.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean...
Rain check.
Yeah, if you're not... Yeah. I think we go back to if you're not in the wedding, you're not that important.
That's kind of how I'm feeling about it. It's like, you don't really need me. You probably just prefer... I'll give you the money I would have spent on a plane to get out there, and I'm going to go hunt that 8-point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's like opening day, right? Or damn near.
Opening day.
It is opening day. Is October 1st opening day in Ohio this year, too?
Yes.
In Ohio and Illinois?
Right in there, yep.
Would PA be the same then?
Usually Ohio's a week before PA.
Yeah, but it's always the first Saturday in October for PA. So I bet they all open same day.
It's possible.
Interesting.
I've never seen them on the same day. I think Ohio's always a week before it.
It's September 30th.
Okay. Ohio is too.
So
they're the same day, September 30th.
Uh-huh.
Which would be, how many days are in September?
30.
Yep, so I would have...
Where's your wedding?
Colorado.
I think the wedding is on the 1st.
That would be the next day.
Yep.
Right. Well, so I'd fly in that day.
Definitely miss it.
You'd fly in on opening day.
Day
or
after.
you fly in
first.
But the wedding's on the 1st.
The day of the wedding.
I fly in the day of the wedding.
And then out the night of the wedding.
Out the night of the wedding. Okay.
And out the next morning.
Yeah.
So I could technically just miss the second day.
I'll be in Illinois on the 1st then.
Might be out on the farm by myself.
Screw these weddings.
It's a very big question mark for me right now.
Yeah, I mean, if we have a giant on Illinois for opening day, that's October 1.
Okay, well, we'll see. I did look last. I don't have to RSVP till the 20th of August.
Yeah, we got time.
Yeah.
See what shows up.
Plenty of time.
Yeah, so we'll figure it out.
That buck in Ohio would be your crypt keeper there on the 30th.
He'll be there. I mean, I know where he's at.
Mm-hmm. I just know that quickly you start to lose them not far after opening day sometimes.
Yeah, he won't. My problem is there's other guys that will go hunt it.
Yeah. I get you.
I got to make the most of, if you don't claim your seat.
Yeah. So this is a cool transition. A couple people have asked this, and frankly, we haven't talked about the strategy as much as, people hear about Ohio and Kentucky, Illinois, Kansas, and they're like, how do you guys hunt all these places? Like, how do you, because this is not what we do for a living. So I know a lot of guys who are, hunting for a living. Crispy, we just talked to, they're hunting 90 to 120 days a year. I mean, they're every day they're in the woods basically, or going to hunt somewhere. As much as we would love that to be the case, it's not the case. Yeah. So we've got, farms in a bunch of different states to hunt, or permission to hunt in a bunch of different states, permission from the landowner, not from our wives. And yeah, it's fun, and I don't want to sound spoiled, but it is a challenge to figure out how to hunt these places effectively. Cause we've talked about it before. The hunting season is short, especially when we talk about bow season. It's,
That said, I'm not going to this wedding.
All right.
Sorry, what were you saying?
You told me. I'm done. This is not happening.
It is so short, dude. The month of October is
October and November.
Every day.
That's it.
Every day matters.
It's October 1st to November 30th. And I'm not trying to, discriminate against our southern brothers down there. I'm just saying it usually is 2 months that is like the prime hunting season for bow, at least. And for us in the Midwest and the Northeast, it's October, November. Maybe as you go further south, it's November, December, January, however you want to look at it. But there's 2 months that are like...
Running in Florida right now, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I can hunt Kentucky September 2nd, but I mean, September hunting is tough.
Well, dude, I feel the pressure more this year than I have in past years, I think, because typically we start September 1st on some kind of Western hunt.
Yeah, Dakota hunt
elk
usually.
Last year, muleys the year before, and like I'm kind of butthurt about the fact we didn't draw North Dakota this year. Like that really sucks.
Yeah, that's a big trip for us. We'll be there next year. We've got talk about planning. Like we got a lot of stuff in the hopper next year, but yeah, because this year I will hunt September 2nd in Kentucky. If I don't have a buck that I'm going to hunt, I'll probably hunt with the kids. Mm-hmm. So the kids will go out opening day or whatever. But then the next weekend, Emily's uncle drew a bull elk Kentucky archery tag. So I'm the pack mule and the guide for a week, or we've got planned a week basically. So that week is kind of out for hunting for me, but it's because it's like a once in a lifetime, Kentucky bull elk archery hunt to be on with her uncle. Who I've hunted together with him when I lived in Kentucky a lot. Like it'll be a fun trip. Mm-hmm. But all of a sudden you're into mid-September at that point with, seasons on the horizon in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Illinois. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess as a plan or as a strategy, the only one we usually have set in stone, mainly for our dads, is Kansas. Is typically the third week of November, the week before Thanksgiving, we go to Kansas. That's Kansas camp. Jared and I could be more flexible, but sometimes they can't. So it's like, that's it. That's when we go, whatever the weather is, whatever's happening at other properties, unfortunately, in many cases, like we're in Kansas for that week. And so that's the one that's kind of set in stone in the books. Plus we have to book like Airbnbs and things like that.
Which we did
this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that one's in the books. Now it's like build everything else around it, and some of it's opportunistic. Some of it's frankly.
Well, we don't know. I mean, some of it's brand new. Illinois is new for this year, so that's add that.
And it's not an easy one. It's 9.5, 10 hours for us to get there.
Yeah.
So it's not like hey, I'm gonna drive 5 hours to Kentucky to hunt. Like, it's double that to get there.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we don't know. I mean, every year is different, but I mean, we have the home farms that it's like you set some staples. You're like, we're going to go to Kansas that third week in November, whatever. You have this elk hunt that's planned here. Everything else in between is like we hunt what we call the home farms. Like for me, it's just Ohio. I've got between our family farm and some of Jed's farms.
Yep.
That's where I hunt in October.
Yep.
And then you've got the same thing between your Ohio and Kentucky farm. You bounce back. And some PA stuff at home.
Yeah, mainly it's kids for PA.
Yeah.
So during the week after school and stuff, kids go, I'll get them out here because I'm not going to necessarily leave and go to one of the other farms. The biggest thing, that people would look at and compare their schedules to, and how do I do that, is like it's flexibility of work schedule. Sure.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, if I drive 5 hours to Kentucky, I'm on the phone for 5 hours working, talking to people, talking to clients, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I have that and when I get there, I have internet. I can get on the computer. I can knock stuff out. Corey and I were talking about this yesterday. Is like the ability to kind of my work goes where I go. Lets me set up to where I could work. 4 o'clock, I'm gonna go jump in the stand.
Yeah.
But I'm already there.
That's what I mean. Even last year.
Yeah, you guys did that in Ohio, right?
We wake up early, we go and sit, and we come back. We work all afternoon until we're ready to go in the stand. And we come back, we finish more work if we have to.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that's just the cycle. You just build it into it.
Yeah.
But that's also the flexibility that not everyone has.
That is key. You do build anymore, dude. We do build it around the hunt. Like no matter what, even if I didn't have a job, like I would build whatever I was doing around the hunting season. And like as the years go on, you get better at it. Frankly, you figure out how to how do I spend more time in the woods is really what we're trying to figure out. So I think the schedules get this much more flexible, or we adapt and work it this way. And
a lot of guys can only do weekend warrior, right? Like if you have a job where you might be able to get off early enough to get home and get out in a stand if your farm's close enough, or if you can get out in that time. But I mean, even the guys here where you have to be somewhere every day for work, and you only have X amount of weeks off a year, and I mean, you can't do that.
That can get pretty extreme too, to the point where it's like, if you get into the real nuts and bolts of this conversation, it's like, okay, well, do I want to have a job or do I want to hunt? Like, on the extreme thing, and you're like, okay, well, why do I need a job? And you're like, well, I have kids, or you don't, or do I have a spouse? What responsibilities do I have? Yeah. I mean, literally, it's a real conversation that Margie and I kind of have off and on. It's like, she's like, well, if we have kids, like you're gonna have to hunt less. I'm like, okay, I guess we're not having kids.
It's an easy decision.
Well, and it's in the back of my mind. It's like, why do I have a job? Why? Yeah. What do you need a job for to produce income to take care of the ones that you love and
hunt?
And that's obviously important. Yeah. Well, but if you want to hunt, if that is a priority, depending on how much time you want to put towards it, it's like the career, stuff that I've chosen is based on being able to do that.
I know a lot of guys who have completely changed career paths for the flexibility of hunting. And that's not necessarily like in the industry or anything, but it's that, they, to Corey's point, they had to go to the office every day, 8 to 4, so plus commute, right? To where they found like a remote sales position or a territory job. Mick Doggett from Hoyt is an amazing example of Mick covers multiple states in southwest part of the United States, Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma, etc. And Mick is a mobile office. His client base is across a lot of the area he hunts. So when he's driving to go see a client in Kansas, guess what? He's going to freaking hunt Kansas while he's up there.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying you have to be in the industry to do that, but medical sales, anything that is in that remote atmosphere. And if there's one thing that COVID gave us, there's a lot of remote positions out there now. A lot of remote positions. And so, again, remote doesn't mean, I get to work from home. Remote means you could work anywhere. In fact, I had an employee for Stone Road. It was funny. I gave her a shitload of credit for it. It was like every day, like I kept looking at it. I was like, Jesus, it's like freaking dark where she's at. She went and stayed in Hawaii for 14 days. She would get up ass crack early to work the normal day schedule with us, and then she'd have all afternoon and evening to enjoy Hawaii. And I didn't give a shit. As long as she got the work done, I didn't care what she did.
And there's no excuse for it anymore because Starlink exists. You can literally throw up a satellite.
How crazy is that? Yeah, because, I mean, that was the thing. It was like, man, like I need internet somewhere. It's like, yeah, you got Starlink, or, I mean, hell, half the stuff, hotspots if I've got phone signal.
Yep.
Dude, the way I see it, I don't have a choice. Like when that hunting season comes, like there's nothing else on my mind. Like I have to be hunting.
Well, and the big thing for us, because we've done it, we still have to a point. Like there are obligations in hunting season that we just, there's no way around it. They have to be done. But the thing that we have learned the most over the last several years of this is you have to, when the conditions are right and he's there, you got to go. Because you can't just say, all right, I'm going to hunt this weekend. Well, what if it washes out or it's 85 degrees in the middle of the rut, right? If Wednesday was the day, you got to figure out how to get out and hunt Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not easy, right? And it's not for everyone. Not everybody can call up their boss and say, hey, I'm going to take a vacation day on Wednesday and it's Tuesday, right? But if you've got a remote position or if you've got a way, it's just like making money. You got to get creative. Figure out a way to do it.
For sure. I think that because I don't have the accessibility, I live 10 hours from here.
Correct.
And then I live 11 and a half from the farm. So if I'm going to hunt, I think one of the things that we've realized is like we have to be flexible, but no matter what, we still need to anchor it.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, we know for sure we're going to carve out these 10 to 12 days, which also not everyone can do, but to say like, hey, this is our window.
Yep.
And it's flexible based on what we're seeing. And then obviously, I mean, how many times have we scheduled stuff and we got washed out for 3 or 4 days? It just wasn't good. It was way too hot last year. It was like every time. Like something happens and we have to be flexible for it, but you still need the anchor to say, especially if you're working a regular job that has to be somewhere, it's like, okay, well, this will be the time. Schedule it around when you know that your land is actually going to be moving and you actually have eyes on stuff. But
it's classic rutcation. I mean, people will ask me all the time. They're like, hey, I'm thinking about taking my rutcation, whatever, November 2nd to the 9th. And it's like, well, yeah, man. I mean, that would be, but if it's hot or you're washed out or whatever, like, it's not as good.
No.
And I mean, that's circling back. That's what our Kansas book trip has cost us basically is the inability to be flexible for that Kansas week has put us in a position to where we hunt 5 days of 80-degree temperatures and we don't see shit. And that, it's still Kansas camp and we love it, but could it be better hunting? Absolutely. If we could be more flexible.
Look at what we did a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like we all load up, we go across, we go to Illinois, we're out there, and then we're like, it's too hot. All of us from all over. Stop what we were doing. I mean, we had it all booked out and we're like, all right, well,
we're done.
We all went home. We all went home the next day.
Doesn't make any sense.
We've done that more than once.
Just one on that one.
Yeah, that was Southern Illinois. Yeah. That's when I pulled the COVID card and said, oh, somebody's got COVID. We got to pull out of this Airbnb. It worked, Nick.
Nice. And then we turned around and drove back out. I mean, that's what you have to do.
It still sucks.
I mean, dude, this lifestyle will yield a lot of windshield time. You know what I mean? If you want to hunt the Midwest and you're not from there.
Well, that's what's cool about remote. I mean, not like just all computer work, but like if you, my job is to live on the phone basically. Yep. My clients love when I have time to talk to them. So when I have windshield time and I can book 5 hours of calls, number one, it makes the trip go faster for me. Number two is I give them a ton of attention that, frankly, I wouldn't give them if I was actually trying to do work on the computer. I can't do that. Yep.
And see, for me, it's different because I'm flying everywhere, almost everywhere at this point exclusively.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pulling 2,000 to 3,000 miles a weekend when I was on the road.
Yeah.
And that was great for.
Yeah.
But now structuring it around flights, I can maximize that time. I can have my laptop because that's where a lot of mine is. So
just be able to get in there, tap in, and go.
But you have the flexibility to do it. You just got to figure out how it accommodates in your work-life balance and your travel, and then obviously accessibility.
I'm envious to a point of the guys who are hunting 90 plus days a year because this is what they do. I also know that those guys get burnt out real fast. But the fact that they can, at any given time, they could be like, oh, yep, next week I'm going here for a week, and then I'm going here for a week. And like, we don't have that ability. Could we say during the week, like, hey, tomorrow looks bang in front, I'm hunting tomorrow? Yeah, I'll pick up and drive to Ohio 3 hours, stay overnight, hunt the next day, and then drive home. I can do that.
There's only so many things in the world that exist like that.
Yeah.
I mean, hunting is one of them. I think of surfing when swells pop up.
Sure.
You guys are flying out that I know.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then snowboarding, like or guys that are skiing when like fresh powder falls and they want to go and they want to hit something. But I can't think of anything else that's like as.
We see that in like up towards Erie when like the steelhead and salmon run happens. Fishing. Like if we get a good rain in that October, November time period and we see a big run, I'll see people jump on that. Same with weather conditions and like musky fishing side of things. Like when the weather conditions turn and temperatures drop on the water, like it's go time. But yeah, and you have to respond to those, right? Because it's such a time constrained. Like if you think about even fresh powder, like 1 week from now, it's not fresh powder anymore.
2 days. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So like you have to take advantage of those situations and you have to get creative. Frankly,
it's year round too, dude, with the farming stuff. Like all of whitetail deer hunting and, you know, if you call it deer farming or whatever, but like all of the food plot, like we're basically farmers during the summer. Like we're checking the weather in 3 different places, like every day.
Shitty farmers, but we are.
Yeah, not good ones.
Not good farmers,
but
yeah.
It's important to us what the weather is.
And it's way more than just doing what you're talking about. Like you were just saying, like, I'm going to go up to the farm and fix fences. I'm going to go and do that. Like there's always something that needs attention.
Gates to put in.
That, like it's not just this curating this. It's the whole package of what you're doing across all those properties. And that maintenance is nuts.
Well, dude, and it's almost like there's a point there where it's like my dad's been asking me to go walleye fishing forever. And I'm like how can I find time to do that? You know, and it's like because every time I go up there, it's like there's more to do. Like there's stuff to do.
And that's it. It's like I was like, again, I was talking on the phone to one of our clients about timber and stuff the other day, and like my wife's like staring out the window, and then like, you know, yesterday it was like dinner, and then I'm like, I got to go fertilize and spray, you know, and it's just limited time that I got to get stuff done. But yeah, it's also just the other times that we're not doing the stuff, we're trying to jam as much work into our lives as possible, because in another 30 plus days, I don't want to jam any more work into my life. Like I want to be thinking about when I can get out and hunt. So, you know, we kind of joke about it. What'd you say? Quarter 1 and 2 are for work or whatever the other day. It was freaking hilarious.
Like Q3, what are you still working for?
Yeah, but that's the fact is when season is happening, we're working obviously, but we want the flexibility to just, if we can go. The rest of the year, it's like double time, because we know that we want to position ourselves to when it's time to go. In fact, a couple of these guys have said about the rutcation, I've kind of said, hey, listen, I don't know what your flexibility is, and I have no idea. If it was up to me, I wouldn't book a week of rutcation. I'd maybe book a day or two around a weekend that you know you want to hunt.
Open. Watch the weather.
Yeah, and then as soon as you have, book a day, because that one day could be way more valuable than your whole 7-day rutcation if it's the right day. You know, if you want to book an extra day on the Halloween weekend or whatever, because we know historically that's a good one, do it. But other than that, just wait, man. And when you see that front coming, you say, hey, I'm going to take Thursday, Friday, and you're going to hit the right 2 days, and it could be way better than a full week of hunting.
Even on a given day, I mean, everybody's situation is going to be so much different. But if you can get to your hunting spot like at a reasonable hour, like every day, or, you know, with some flexibility, like in that late October, like just shift your work schedule up type of a deal. Like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like I'm going to have the option to hunt every day in October or November, but it may just be the evening, or it may just be the morning. You know, the mornings don't become important until October 25th. So then it's like, okay, how do I make things happen on hot days and like in between hunts? And then eventually November comes and everything just kind of falls apart. You just all we're doing is hunting. But
I mean, look at how many, even that last buck that I shot, we sat for.
Which one was that?
12 days. Tough call.
Oh yeah. We
sat for 12 days, and it was the last sit in the last hour, in the last, like we were literally getting ready to get down after 12 days.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly what our weather was like for that trip, but we were,
got hot.
It was tough.
It was hot when it got wet, and then it just wasn't, there was nothing moving.
Yeah.
And then a deer that we had never seen walked in literally in the last hour.
You remember which one he's talking about?
Yeah.
At the pinch?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
man.
That was it. And that's what it took. But it took that whole time of like, oh my goodness, what is this?
Well, a lot of downs before the one up. Yeah. And again, maybe that's a good example of where it was like, hey, if you could have seen that a week ahead of time, it's like, hey, I'm not going to take off these days because it's just not going to be good. I'll start here and hunt a few days, and we'll see what happens.
That's being nimble. I mean, we worked for 3 days out of it, like in, you know.
Yeah, why not? When everything else was washed out and there's nothing else to do, like why not work on
I will say that the technology advance has the pro and con, because one of the things I used to love about hunting when we were growing up was that we could go out there and there was no cell phone. There was no way to be accessible to people. And now I can sit and work in my tree stand, which is good to be accessible, but it also means that I can work in my tree stand. So it's like there's the pro and con where you can't really disconnect, and you're trying to be adamant about savoring that time and being present 100%, but also, you know, being out there and managing and being accessible, different responsibilities now as well. But some guys that can, even if you have that time to go out and be in the woods, I just like being out there regardless.
Yep.
So. It's part of it. I mean, it's part of the sacrifice for that flexibility to be able to hunt.
For sure.
It's like, yeah, you have to answer some emails. I definitely don't. It's not like I'm going to go to the tree stands and get all my emails answered. But if things come in that need address and stuff, you got to do it. But I don't know. There's nothing like that time of year, man. I tried my best, like throughout the year, like with all of our clients and stuff, and with my wife and stuff, and our friends who are inviting us to weddings and stuff, to preface like it's like, hey, this is what I do, like, and it's, I don't know, I feel pretty selfish, honestly, like looking at this opening day thing and being like, I'm not going to go to this wedding.
You can't not. I mean, it's because
it's Austin's wedding. It's in Colorado.
As much as we joke about it, like oh, deer hunting is life, like beyond our like family, friends, loved ones, like. This is what we do. Like our own, like our hobby is deer. Like there is no, like, sure, like we go to concerts or whatever, but it's not
you can't even call it a hobby. It's just like,
it's a lifestyle.
It's like literally, this is what I do.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle on it. And I hear somebody commented the other day, like, whatever, I deer hunt. I try to kill my deer quick so then I can duck hunt and fish. And I was like, I don't do any of that.
Yeah.
Like in the fall, like, unless I'm like somehow tagged out. In fact, somebody said, and take a minute, maybe we can it's hard to describe this feeling. We've talked about it.
You're getting me in the mode here.
We've talked.
This is making me want a day beer.
We've talked about this.
I'm feeling a late October, midday.
Oh, a little shandy? Or Oktoberfest?
I'm feeling like a hazy, like a Sweetwater.
A little Sweetwater 420, huh? Yeah. So I didn't know. I probably commented to this person. I just don't know how to explain it. And so I think it was around us talking about like how, not we'll do anything, but how much effort and money we do to try to be in the game for a Boone and Crockett caliber animal. And basically they shunned us essentially because, our focus is on Boone and Crockett, not the hunt experience. What I try to explain to him, and maybe I did a shitty job at this, is that, personally, I set the bar as high as possible so my season doesn't end. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the fact is like I love to be in the stand and bow hunt and pursue so much that the moment I shoot a buck, even if it's a Boone and Crockett deer, like it's over, right? Which is honestly why I create other opportunities in other states, is so that it never ends, right? I would rather end the season hunting the entire way through with all of my tags than shoot a buck first day, every day, and be done right away. And that's a weird thing to like say, because isn't the culmination to kill a giant buck? Yes, it is. But I've done it in the past.
It has to be just out of reach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want the goals to be like, it could happen, but it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
When
I only hunted Pennsylvania, I remember it was probably in college, early college or something. I killed, at that time, was the biggest buck with my bow the second weekend of the season. And I remember feeling like, what the hell do I do now? Like, I went out and killed does and stuff, but it was just like, it's over. I didn't hunt anywhere else. There were no other states in my mind. It was like, what do I do at this point? What are we doing?
Yeah. What are they doing to us?
What are they doing to us? But yeah, so part of buying in other states or leasing or whatever you want to say is so that my season continues. Like it has no end until the season ends. But that goal of when we say Boone and Crockett or a mature buck or whatever is that, to your point, I love that description, just out of reach. So I'm being pulled through the season, chasing a goal that frankly I may know is almost unattainable, just so that I can experience the entire season through. And if I get it, it's like just crashes the ceiling. Yeah. Right.
What good is it to have a goal that you know is attainable? Like that's not fun.
Well, we talk about, we always love to put ourselves in an uncomfortable position because that breeds growth.
Well, and you should set goals in life and in business like the same way that we do in the deer season. It's like it should be the highest, questionable as to whether it's attainable or not. So that as you know, through the pursuit, like you're learning, you're failing, you're just like at the premium of the experience, you know, and you will fail. Like there are plenty of seasons where we won't, we won't achieve that
a lot
goal.
of tags.
But
I'm okay
but
with
we'll
that.
enjoy the hell out of it.
Because I enjoyed
meantime.
the hell out of that. So
Worth
that's
every penny, every bit of energy.
Yeah, and I'm not putting that person in. I'm just hoping I explain it better because they act like the experience doesn't matter. The experience is everything.
It's
to them.
everything. Yeah.
The chase of that just out of reach goal is the experience I see.
Who said that, dude? It was Cody DeQuista. That's like, you think you want to shoot that, but you think you wanted to tag on it, but you don't. You want to fail
suffer.
and you want to keep suffering.
You want to miss them again 2 weeks later.
And he was right about that.
Yeah, because you just don't want to. And this is not a
Stockholm
knock.
syndrome thing.
Yeah, it's not a
just
knock
keep
on them.
Keep pulling you back in.
If you want to just kill a buck, that's fine, but that's because you don't care about hunting as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is. Unless you're just like, I'm going to kill a bunch of these and I'm going to keep hunting.
It's the love of the season, dude. Like there is nothing to describe. It's funny, dude. We start getting what's not emotional or just like
giddy.
How would you describe like our the emotions that are coming up like mid to end of September where it's just mystical? It's just like it's here, dude.
Well,
like,
it's an overflowing anticipation at that point.
Yeah.
Like you just can't contain
Brimming.
the shit. Yeah, you're brimmed over at that point. You can't contain it. The joy, everybody knows. I think it's sometime in those first 2 weeks of October where like leaves are falling, acorns are dropping, frosty morning or a cooling like evening, those thermals are pulling down, and you're just like, you just freeze for a second and just soak it in.
It's just magic.
And it's just, nothing could happen that day at all. But because it's soaking it in, you're like, I get goosebumps just literally. Like I have goosebumps talking about that. Because that is the feeling that I think anybody who really, really believes in this and lifestyles it lives for. And the scary thing is, dude, we don't have as many falls as we think we have. Like that's, I've seen it more and more from people. In fact, slight deviation. Yeah. You ever heard of Josh Bias? He he hunted all the
he's got a
bow hunting counties in West Virginia.
Bias. Does he have a brother that's on the in Ohio? Dan Bias.
Maybe.
That's team.
They've got some hunting group.
Team Radical.
I'll look it up.
Look up Dan Bias.
They have some hunting. I don't know if he's related. Anyways, Josh was in southern West Virginia. He was known for hunting the bow hunting only counties we talk about all the time. Okay. Killed some giants. Killed a freak Boone and Crockett a couple years ago. And I don't know what happened, so I'm not gonna make. He passed away this past week. Young, a little bit older than me.
No way.
Not sure from what, and but out of respect for the family, won't speculate on it. But a critical part of our community, had wrote for deer, North American whitetail on some of these just giant mountain bucks in West Virginia. Guy had developed a skill for killing big bucks in West Virginia bow hunting counties, which are not easy to hunt. Came across my social feed this week.
That sucks. I don't know if they're related. It's Tyneman is Dan Bias.
Maybe. Yeah, I think it is.
Tyneman. I wonder if that's his brother or something.
Yeah. I don't know. Cousin, brother.
It's sobering, right? I mean,
it goes back to the, because that guy, much like this community we're talking about, that dude lived for fall and he won't see this one. And so it's like, those are those days that, maybe it doesn't work out or maybe you're stressed out about something else, but, you don't have many of them, as much as we think like, next year, 2 years from now.
Well, that's
not promised.
That's the perspective that you got to try to have that time of year. It's like, yeah, I know there's responsibilities. I know things are important to get done, but it's like knowing, we may not have that many seasons and knowing that it only comes this time of year. It's like, what really is more important? Is more important to be out there and to do what you love?
Well, and I think we've been told, media, family, whatever, that it's like, no, your job, your career, money, that's the priority in life. None of that shit will make you happy usually. Is it necessary? Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it's necessary. But like when you talk about like people being happy, I mean, there are a lot of very, very rich people in this country who are miserable pricks.
Most.
Sure.
Yeah.
For me, it's totally, I get so little time in the woods, but if I don't, that is what carries me through the year. Like that time is so critical to my year function to understand how I can go in, recharge, reframe my mindset, go in there. And we're still planning through the year for it. We're talking about it, but like that time is so sacred that I have to have. It's a non-negotiable. It's like I have to have this time so I can get through the rest of the year in a way.
Yeah.
To detox and like get out and experience that. It's a whole washing every year.
Yeah. It's wild, man. I mean, it's a hard thing to put in, but I just want to bring that up from an address. First of all, really sorry to hear about Josh. Yeah. It's cool to I talked to him numerous times. I say it was like Calculated Killers or something was like his like pathway brand. He had done some stuff with like Twisted Oaks and things that like Jeremiah had promoted in the past. So first of all, sorry to hear about him and a major loss to the bow community, especially kind of in our Appalachian region. Like there's not many of us that are out there trying to kill giants, and he was one of them. But, kind of circling back to that priority of time and figuring out like, there's opportunities to get creative. You can push the bounds only so far before you sacrifice something that, you need money, you need to put, a roof over your family's head. But, that season tends to go so fast. There, like if you rewind, 50 plus podcasts, and you hear us talking in like October, we're like, it's October 1st, the first week, man. But next thing you know, it's like, holy shit, it's Christmas. Like, what happened?
Dude, it really is so. I mean, think about how fast the weeks and months go. Like now, just during the, and it's like when every day, every weather front, every whatever makes is progressing throughout the season. It's like it's over before you know it, and it's like how can't I not stop everything for this?
It's funny.
That's what you look forward to.
I love talking to like the non-hunters about it because I don't know, somehow in like small talk conversation will come up and be like, fall's my favorite season. I'm like, I fucking hate summer with a passion. And they're like, what? Like, it's vacation. I was like, no, like I'm miserable. Yeah. Like, don't talk to me.
It's funny interacting with people during the deer season. You're like, say it to them, but it's like, you guys are all missing out like the best thing in the world. Right? Yeah. It's happening right now.
They're like, you're picking pumpkins? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm about to go slay a dragon. Yeah. So
don't invite me to any more weddings in October.
Yeah, don't do that.
You have friends that are hunters.
Yeah.
Don't plan a wedding out of courtesy.
Yeah. And it really starts. I mean, the scary thing is the more you pack it in there, it's like 6 to 7 weeks of like, that's it.
Non-negotiables.
Iowa's different. Like we were talking with Skalma and Duncan here, and they're talking late season muzzleloader and stuff. And I'm like, bro, I am in a state of deep depression by like January.
Mine's right after gun season.
Yeah,
that's when everything that's left gets killed.
Yeah, just plummets right after that.
Yeah, I've got a deer herd up until then.
Maybe I don't know. That'll be the cool thing about Illinois. Is like maybe we have great late season hunting out there. I don't know. Yeah. It's
I'm so excited to be in a non-bait state. I just think deer are absolutely going to still get killed, and no, there's some seasons that I'm not a fan of, in terms of when those gun seasons fall.
Sure.
But I just think like the playing field is so leveled, regardless of like the weapon that you're using. That bait is just such a manipulator, like such a giant factor in states where you can't do it. It'll be nice to be out of that for a bit.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out.
I had a good talk with a couple people the other day on Kentucky. So for the first year, Kentucky always had I think it was the first part of March to like May 31st. Basically, during turkey season, you couldn't feed wildlife. This year was the first year they extended it from March 1st to July 31st. So basically, today's August 3rd, right? So Tuesday was the first day you could feed or bait again in Kentucky in expectation of the season coming up here in September. I think that's their first move to banning feeding. Transparently, you can yell at me all you want, but
feeding or baiting?
We went through that with the Minnesota, which thanks for helping us clear up. Like there's a difference between feeding, in which you can do in the off season, and baiting, which you cannot do in Minnesota during the season.
Apparently.
Make it any more confusing.
Yeah, give you a rocket science to figure it out.
In Kentucky, I can feed through the off season after August 1st, and I can bait during the season. I do think that those are both in the midst to go away in the next few years. Whether other states will follow. I mean, Kansas has a baiting bill banning on the table right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know where it'll go. Will it change that state? 100%. I mean, it'll disrupt a lot of things in that state. And even some really good hunters that we know, like in the places they're hunting, they almost have to bait to pull these deer into bow range.
Just the size. Yeah.
There's no timber. It's just big grass fields and stuff. Like, why would a deer ever walk to this point in a grass field unless there was something there for it? So, I mean, it will completely disrupt that entire state, as it would with a Kentucky or an Ohio or anyone else.
I bet the gun harvest would spike. Because I think a lot of guys would be unsuccessful in the archery season. And they would default back to, and different terrains will dictate the success of that. But
I do think that the age structure would increase, though, immediately.
No doubt.
And I think that the amount of leased ground would decrease, or it would decrease in value, because I think people go there because it's, you put a corn pile out on a cattle pasture and you kill a deer over it. You can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's not passed. Who knows? But it definitely does seem like it could happen. I think, again, it's easier to remove everything once you have banned baiting for 5+ months, Kentucky, than to have it wide open and then say, yeah, we're not doing it anymore. Mm-hmm. So you're going to see it happening, and we won't get into the whole CWD or disease of why it's going to happen. Just know it's coming. And it's also not favored by the general public. Like hunting, if we go back into this hunting community discussion, baiting deer to hunt is looked at as cheating by the general public, 100%. They do not think that that's
based
right.
on what? Where we see that?
It's just from polls on the general public side of things. Not the hunting.
Non-hunters.
Correct. Yeah. Baiting, killing deer over a pile of apples is cheating. It's not. That's not hunting.
I had a conversation with one of our real estate clients the other day. He was talking about. He said, I don't understand the difference between baiting and feeding. And so I took the liberty of explaining it to him. I said, well, here, I'm against baiting. I said, here's why. Hunting a state where it's allowed, and here's what I think it does, and here's the level of effort that has to go into planting a food plot, and here's how that works versus dumping a corn pile. And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. Like, if ultimately they tell me I can't do it, then it's fine. Like I much like I know Bomar does it, and a couple other guys we talked to, but like the feeding in the off season from a supplemental source and stuff. Like, I mean, if you're going to play the disease card, you can't do it. You can't have both. You can't not be able to bait during the season, in my opinion, right? So let's take Iowa. Let's pick on Iowa here for a second. Can't bait during the season, meaning cannot bait while you're hunting, but you can feed. Yeah, you cannot bait in Iowa.
Well, dude, because remember Bill was doing that, right?
You can't bait.
Well, he was baiting for
he was
inventory.
Feeding.
Yeah, feeding. He wasn't hunting them.
I don't know where that line
but
is.
That's what the warden told him. Yeah, he can feed during the season, but
just
you
can't hunt over it.
Can't hunt over it.
Yeah, I would assume, because I know Lukowski's got the camera going all season.
But it's a short time frame. It's like within a week or something, it's got to be gone.
Yeah, like Lukowski's camera is going at all times during the season. Sure. So you can feed, you just can't hunt over bait.
Yeah.
That's sketchy for me. Because, I mean, if it's going to be, if the reason for baiting is, right now, they're going to say it's non-fair hunting or whatever, unfair hunting, but it's really probably disease, well, then you shouldn't be able to feed either.
If that's the reason.
That's the reason, right? So all of these things, I think, are coming to a head really, really fast, whether we like it or not. And I completely get it.
The CWD thing has been, like, just to see comments on the last podcast is like, nobody seems to be taking it seriously.
None. Yeah, and I still do. I mean, do I think, again, it's kind of that hard to explain. Like, is CWD itself killing deer? No. Is it causing deer to get killed at higher rates? Yes, because it they don't act like deer. They're out of their mind, right? Is there proactive measures that are probably too extreme being taken by states? I think so. Mainly because we don't know, right? It's an unknown thing here. Should we do nothing? Absolutely not, in my opinion. Doing nothing could be the worst thing.
Seems to be what most people think.
Well, it's because they're idiots. They're idiots. Yeah. Do nothing, and then the deer go away, and can I say, okay, I blame you, it's your fault? And they'll be like, oh, it's not my fault that we didn't do anything. Yeah, it was, because you said so.
Yeah.
It's just, they would never take accountability for it.
I mean, without proof that it has a drastic effect, like, I can understand why people think that way.
We have proof. We have proof inside of where it occurred originally in Colorado with the mule deer and stuff, that all the deer in that pen died from it eventually. No external factors. They died. We put new deer inside that pen. Those deer died because it was in the soil when they ate it. So, like, it is always fatal. Dead. It's just because of the way deer die in the wild. I'm not saying that no deer are dying in the wild from CWD. It's just the majority of deer. Yeah, the majority is deer vehicle collision or hunter harvest type of thing.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can, once they contract it, it's 18 months or so, 24 months before that disease would actually kill them. They die from something else in between. Because the lifespan of an average deer in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania is what, probably 3 years?
Less than that. Well, of a buck anyways.
Yeah. So there you go. And bucks are more prevalent to get it than does.
Yeah.
So if the average buck dies at 3 from something, right, and he gets it at 12 months, he's going to probably die prior to getting killed.
It was interesting talking about, like, especially in those higher pressure states, about like the age structure of bucks versus the age structure of does. Like, we were talking, dude, the age structure of does must be astronomically higher than bucks, like, just across the board.
Absolutely.
But the higher the pressure of the state, like, probably the greater the distance. Like, there's probably does in Pennsylvania, like, you probably see 10-plus-year-old does pretty frequently.
Ancient.
And the likelihood of seeing a 3 or 4 year old buck is not good. And I really wonder how that, like,
that's the hunter mindset. I mean, most hunters, somebody's going to say that they will, but most hunters don't want to shoot doe. They want to shoot a buck. That's why at one point in time, the average buck harvest in Pennsylvania was like 96% were 1 year old.
You could look at a 5-year-old doe and not know.
Yeah.
Or versus
you either want to shoot the doe or you don't want to shoot the doe.
Yeah, it's a doe's a doe.
Doe's a doe.
Yeah.
Dobie-1 Kenobis, as we call them.
Dobie-1 Kenobis.
We may have been really fucking loopy in Illinois at that point.
I said like just a Dobie-1 Kenobi. And a mega doe is
mega doe.
Mega doe.
Mega doe. You either want to shoot it or you don't. Where the buck comes in actual, judgmental skills from a subjective standpoint of like, well, it's a 1 year old or it's a good enough buck.
The antlers have a lot to do. That's a big rack on that thing.
Yeah, I'll kill it.
Shoot it or not.
Yeah, most don't look at or think about the age; they just think antlers. So, but yeah, I mean, it's a hard thing when you kind of look at that. And again, I'm not in agreement with most things that DNRs are doing from a CWD standpoint. In fact, I think that they're doing a piss poor job at communicating what they're doing and why they're doing it, which is why you see a lot of the responses. So I can't blame the hunters for saying, "Hey, this is bullshit." It is a real threat. It's just the people that we're entrusting to handle the threat are not communicating how they're handling the threat or why they're handling it the way they are.
Sure.
Sounds like our government.
Yep.
To a T.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I get the responses that we hear from that thing, but, again, living in the research and the science side of it, I've seen the result. Like, I see what could happen if we do nothing. We have to do something. I can't tell you that it's what some of these states are actually doing.
I'm kind of tired of talking about it, but like, what do you say to some of these, southeastern states? Or I saw some guy in Wisconsin was commenting about, he's like, I think the deer just kind of develop an immune response to it.
No, I don't think so. I would be like saying that,
well, you've said that
the
even
human,
before, like
no,
in the
EHD,
Southeast.
EHD, they develop an immunity too.
Okay.
Not CWD. CWD is always fatal. Different effects on different systems of the body, right? Chronic wasting disease is affecting like the brain, right? It's a deterioration of the brain and nervous system. EHD is not. It's a virus, right? So two different. That's like the same thing when somebody says, "Well, it's just like COVID."
Sure.
Well, no, COVID didn't affect your brain. Like COVID was a respiratory disease.
Yeah,
different thing. Think about the impacts of like, a deer can get shot in a single lung and survive. can't get shot in the brain and survive.
Mm-hmm.
It's the easiest way to look at it. So it's just different. There is, to my knowledge and to anything I've said, there's no immunity to CWD.
Yeah. It's way over.
The hardest part, I think, for people to do, we won't dive down this too far, but the hardest thing for, I think, people to understand, and I completely understand it on my side, and I don't know how to even explain it, is like, there's a lot of people, in fact, Eric Mitchell was one, killed a really like stud 220-pound 3.5-year-old buck, right? Sends the samples off, tested positive. So now I'm looking at a healthy, like whatever, 130 plus inch buck that weighed 220 pounds that has chronic wasting disease. Like, that's the disconnect that's happening here, right? It's like, okay, well, that deer looks like he's fine, like he's healthy. Now, 18 months from now, probably not. But he also didn't make it 18 months. He died at where probably most of these bucks are dying, in that 3-4-year-old age class max, right? So it's a hard thing. And then again, to the communication side, and this is purely my opinion from reading things, is that as these deer progress in the disease, like let's say they contract the CWD, as it progresses, they begin to act not like deer, right? They begin to lose their fear of humans. They begin to do stupid stuff. They begin to, just casually stroll across roads. All of these things lead to a higher mortality rate, not necessarily because of the disease, but indirectly from the disease, symptoms, essentially, which is what happened, frankly, if you want to compare apples to apples to COVID, which I don't think is great, but like a lot of people didn't die from COVID. They died from pneumonia or cardiac arrest or something else that spurred off of that same thing.
Well, it's the response is so similar is why somebody might say that they
agree. I think the biggest thing is that chronic wasting is chronic wasting disease across any whitetail, in fact, most cervids in the United States, right? Why is every state reacting differently and doing things differently? It makes no sense, right? Shouldn't we all be working together to figure out, hey, this is what we have to do, and now everybody apply it? And I know every state is different in terms of seasons and hunter densities and whatever else. But it's like, if this state's going in and doing sharpshooting and killing a massive number of deer, and this one's just doing hunter harvested check, and this one's doing hardly anything, like that's where all of a sudden you compare it to a COVID, because it's like none of this makes sense.
Because nobody knows what they're doing.
Nobody knows what they're doing.
Why. So one state will try something, and then a couple of years later, they're like, well, that didn't work.
And
glad we didn't do that.
What's the biggest fear of government is to say, hey, guys, we don't know what we're doing here. We're not sure about it.
We know you don't know. You don't have to say it. We know.
But they won't admit. And that's where the communication gaps, just like COVID and anything else, probably going to get black flagged now, Nick, because we said COVID 30 times. But the fact is, that's where the communication gap ends up between the general public and the hunting community in this case, and the people who are making the decisions. And it's like, dude, all you got to do is talk to us. The problem is they're fearful of people making their own inferences and maybe not being what they wanted inferred. Well, guess what? It's your freedom to do that thing. You can tell us that, and I can make my own decision. That's a free country. And then you have to react to what I say. And you can tell me I'm wrong, but then show me the proof I'm wrong. Like, this is how systematic things work. We don't see that in most cases. So the number one reason is that they don't think that the hunting population can handle the information about CWD, that it'll be the next big conspiracy. So they'd rather not tell you than tell you anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which, I don't know if it's any better, because
I don't think I think it's worse.
Either, so it's
you see the reactions. I think it's worse. At least if you gave some valuable scientific, and there is some data out there, I won't say that nobody's doing it, but there is some good stuff out there. But if you actually communicated to the outside public, at least there are going to be some people that say, okay, well, this makes sense. I understand why you're doing it. Yeah, sure. There's a group over here that's calling you, wearing foil hats and saying whatever.
You're always going to have them.
Yeah. But at least there's some stuff that I can say, okay, I understand why you're doing it. But if you don't talk to me at all, now I think you're hiding stuff. Or you're just flat out lying to me.
Well, it'd be worth looking at like a track record of instances or, epidemics or whatever that like the government addressed and, took intervention to try to prevent. And like on a grand scale, like as time has passed here, so you could look at like, I don't know, polio or like some things to say, well, we addressed that, but even now, like with, what's his name? Robert Kennedy's talking about the effects of this and that,
Sure.
and like whether it was really a net positive or not. It's
Right.
like, what is the track record of the U.S. or of any government stepping in with like biological issues like this? And CWD is obviously not as important as on the human level, but what is the actual said and done rate of success? Like, have we actually ever fixed anything? Like, have we made anything better?
Trading problems.
Or are you just trading problems?
It's a good question.
That's all it ever is.
Apply it to whatever, most recently COVID. Per this conversation, the CWD thing, like, yeah, it certainly seems like these things require some intervention, but like, at what cost? And ultimately, at what cost?
Yeah. Well, and that is the main point around CWD is that these people are basically saying, listen, you're going to come in here.
Hence my question about the shoot all these deer. And I understand your response too, and you're probably right. But it's like, it's worth asking, like, should we do nothing? Is that better than in the short term?
It's the consequence of, okay, do nothing. There are no more deer in your area. Is that your fault?
Well, or do something and there's still no deer.
Well, that's the thing though. By doing something, you might not have the deer densities that you had or the quality that you have, but you have deer still, right? Like take Northern Missouri, for example.
Maybe, in theory.
10 years ago, when they came into Northern Missouri for CWD, they wiped out a lot of deer. And I mean, it was property values dropped. Nobody leased there. They were in an uproar, right?
To our knowledge, though, it hasn't remedied the level of infection at all, right?
I don't know. I don't know what those stats look like now. Yeah. All I do know is the quality of bucks that are coming out of there are giants right now.
Yeah, but unrelated to that's going to happen anywhere. If you go in and wipe out a bunch of deer,
but
where there's good habitat.
There's still deer, and there's still good deer. That's what I'm saying. Like, deer are very, very hardy from a pliability standpoint.
Yes, but it's a separate issue. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're talking about, like, setting back the population. And I agree. You could do that anywhere. And
yeah, but nobody's saying, hey, we're going to kill every deer in this area.
But CWD will. Yeah.
Doing nothing.
It's unbiased. Yeah.
Well, I guess because we don't have the information to say that helped the CWD issue. Yes, it helped the quality of deer, but
it didn't eradicate the problem.
It's unrelated to the.
But the deer are
that
still
is the
there.
reason they did it. Well, they were there before too, though.
Sure.
But CWD is still there too.
Yep.
So without that final study number, we can't really say anything. I don't know.
Maybe just as many didn't die in that time.
Or that there's still a population 10 years later where if we did nothing, maybe there'd be no population.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Are you willing to take that risk?
Seems like some people are.
I would call bullshit. At least for me, going back to what we've talked about this whole podcast, I wouldn't take the risk. If you would tell me that, hey, if we do nothing, everything could be fine 10 years from now, right? If we do something, we're going to reduce deer, but 10 years from now, you will have deer guaranteed. I'll take the latter. Because if you tell me,
if
I don't know
10 years, you can make that guarantee, though. I mean,
why not?
They would think, you would hope.
I mean, data showing it. Northern Missouri, there's still deer 10 years later.
I'm not getting anything out of the Missouri thing. Like, I think there very well might have still been plenty of deer. I'd love to know, right?
But that's the problem. Is one is unknown, one is known. We took those actions so that 10 years later there are still deer here, and there are. We have proof. There are deer there. There are big deer there. If you did nothing, there's no guarantee that you would have deer here today.
We should get somebody from Northern Missouri that was involved in that study on to talk about it. I'd love to know. They probably have that after the fact. The stats and stuff. I assume
they better.
We're just talking out
it's
of
just
our
a
butts.
waste. Yeah,
yeah, they should.
Yeah,
they should. I'm
anybody
sure a
over
lot
there?
of states. Yeah,
a
lot of people.
All right.
Yeah, either there or Wisconsin, or there's plenty of states. Wisconsin's got the highest prevalency. Kansas has got it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different states to choose. It comes down to the fact that if we do nothing, it's unknown what the outcome is. There is data to support that if we do something, I'm not saying that CWD is gone, like we eradicate it, but the deer are still here. Because we were just like any disease. If we reduce the population, the disease can't spread as fast. Right?
Sounds like the government talking.
And so it is.
Well, and I'm honestly, it's hard not to relate it back to the COVID thing because it happens so recently here, and it's like.
So I mean, take COVID for example. The thing is if we're all together, the disease will spread faster, right?
Mm-hmm. In theory, yeah.
That's what they told us. Yeah. So they kept us apart.
Well, more than that, it's if you don't wear masks, if you don't get vaccinated, if you don't do all this stuff,
that
all those
it'll
are
spread
supposed
faster
to prevent it,
and keep apart, basically.
Yep.
Right. Well, the mask and the disease the mask and the vaccine was supposedly to allow us to get back together. Mm-hmm. The initial response was stay away from each other, spread apart, no interaction.
Isolate.
Which would be why they would go in there and reduce a population of deer is to prevent more interactions of deer.
Yep.
More deer together, more chances of spread.
Yeah, I mean, it seems similar.
What's interesting was that you were saying about the muley and it being in the soil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it doesn't matter if
the deer dies there, though.
Well, they are very different diseases, too. I mean, that's the.
But if it all goes, if everything dies there and then you just put in, rather than 10, you put in 2, but the soil's still bad, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it still dies.
Doesn't matter.
Right. So it's like, so the question at scale is that if the soil's still bad where those deer are at, how does it matter if there's 2?
They're still going to get it.
100? They're still going to get it.
Still going to get it. Yep.
Still pass it. And
but they're trying to prevent. The reason
is different though. It's not because of the close proximity of the animals. It's because CWD lives, through like it if something dies that has CWD, it'll go into the soil, and then whatever grows out of the soil contains that, and then if it gets eaten by something in the future, and COVID didn't have that.
Right. No, I understand. But I'm saying that even if you go and take out a big population, are they actually just removing those deer?
Like, that's it. They're not letting them die and decompose there. Now, here's where the real twist comes in everything as this advances further is they're saying now, and there's proof, right? CWD's in urine and saliva and blood. So, like, if I shoot that deer and it bleeds all over the ground, like, I don't know.
Yeah. How do you do that at scale too? Like who pays for the infrastructure and then the disposal?
Government. Well, taxpayers.
Taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
Taxpayer dollars.
I don't see them being that motivated to go in and really make it happen.
They did.
On a national level?
Well, no.
Right.
That's where the state region. That's where all of these things are different because there's different funding for different states.
To your point, it's like how
there's different rates of infection too. Like there's different places where they'll say it's 40%. Other places it's all not there.
Yeah, and that's the hard part is like,
zero.
It comes down to the, it's like who do you trust, right? And ultimately, in any of this stuff, whether it's COVID or
that's
CWD.
That's where they are very similar is because you almost sometimes you don't know if they have it, and it sometimes takes like several year onset for it to be realized.
Yeah, and I mean, so again, if because of how vested we are in it, it's like, if you tell me you have to do this in order for deer to be here 5 years from now, I'll do it versus the alternative being there could be no deer 5 years from now.
And you will, but does that also apply to everyone else that's out there in the woods?
No,
they're not gonna care either way.
No, which it could lead to the downfall of whitetail deer in this country.
Sure.
If enough people get together and say CWD is COVID-esque and we don't want to do anything, and then all the deer in Missouri and Midwest disappear, did those people feel the blame for it? No.
Well, I mean, I'm sure everybody feels differently about how the COVID thing ended up. You could say we're out of it on the other side of it now, but there's probably a lot of people that would say we'd have been better off doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's more than 50% of people in the country at this point.
Well, I mean, yeah. And
not that the percentages, it's not like it's a vote.
What would have been the outcome, though?
Just like Missouri, we don't know, right? Because we did it.
Well, but even would have been the outcome of do nothing, during it. I mean, we had a 3 months of what the hell are we doing in life?
Oh, it's more than that. I mean, dude, it's been 3 years. People still are
some people never.
Our country's in shambles. It ruined our country.
I don't know if that's from COVID necessarily, as much as it is from the government overall. I mean,
fair enough.
I mean, because most people who would say that are saying from a Democratic side, Joe Biden sucks, he's no good. But I mean, Trump was in office when COVID hit, and I would say most of these people support the Republican government.
Well, I think it has to do. I think the disease did very little to affect the state of our country at this point. It was the reaction to it.
Sure.
that caused 90% of it, and it would be the business shutdowns would be the biggest thing. You know, on top of, you know, at a individual level, the isolation I think had some extremely negative effects. Just on the mental
isolation on mental state in children especially was terrible.
Yeah. Well, dude, I still see people driving by themselves in their car with a mask, like in 2023, and I'm like,
that's the craziest thing.
This
I've ever
person's
seen.
they're ruined from the situation. You know?
Yeah, which is weird, you know, because like most countries in Asia, that's what they have always done. Like if you go to like travel into like Tokyo or something, like everybody had
and it may be applicable for it's not just, you know, mask or no mask. It's that person's state of mind.
Sure.
You know, overall.
Some of that relates to air pollution too. Other reasons in those big cities, especially over China.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's still. I just got back from Asia and Egypt, Middle East, and I mean, there's still people wearing masks around. Quite a bit.
I mean, from what I've heard is like China had like another COVID outbreak, whatever the hell that means at this point.
Yeah, right. Well, but just for the sake of the conversation, like it's interesting to compare to CWD. They're not apples to apples because they're very different.
The
diseases.
reactionary side of it is because it's a non. We as a public don't have a say in it, right?
How so?
Well, as a petri dish, like
you and I don't have a say in how CWD's handled. We didn't have a say how COVID was handled and reacted to.
Right. Other than what we did personally.
Correct.
But the population that it affects is so small compared to the mass of COVID. So it's, I mean, the attention and the level of care that it's going to receive is so limited.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, the only noise is going to come from us, you know, people like us.
Well, yeah, and it's not like there's that much money to be made from who knows, from a CWD vaccine that you could administer to your deer. Like
I think people are doing it.
It's minuscule compared to the vaccine.
The deer farming community.
Maybe that's the move. Is just a company that just goes out.
Well,
and
there's no big pharma in the deer industry. There is. Well, maybe
there has to be.
There is a big pharma, and it's in the deer farming community.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money spent into that. And there is a CWD vaccine. There's an EHD. In fact, when I worked at Mississippi State, you talk about the EHD side, which very clear. EHD, CWD, two different things. Don't get them confused. EHD, our research deer, when we got hit really hard in Mississippi in 2008, 7, 8, something like that, we actually were administering a EHD vaccine twice a year to a deer to try to help build that immunity and to survive on that stuff. But
did it help? We don't know.
I don't know. Maybe. The hard part is like it's not realistic at a landscape level.
Right.
Like I'm literally darting a deer twice a year, administering it when I'm giving other vaccines and things like that too.
The application is the hardest thing probably with wildlife.
Yeah,
you do better with probably just removal and starting a removal company.
They've tried it with the immunocontraceptives in New York City and in New Jersey and stuff too, where, you know, instead of just going in and shooting all the deer, they're going to dart an immunocontraceptive drug into females, into does to not produce fawns. Well, like the amount of money and effort and time and effectiveness of that is all just fairy dust, you know?
Here would be my broad stroke statement to wrap it up. I personally have a lot of confidence in human beings and wildlife's just the resiliency that's built in, and I just find myself wanting to bet on our ability to overcome things that you know, whether it be COVID or CWD or whatever. And I don't know. I don't have like statistics necessarily to back that up. We can look at COVID and say, well, this was similar, and here's how that should have happened, or you know, we can quarterback that all we want. And so I want to like be in favor of like, do nothing, let it overcome. And I can understand the argument that you're making is, you're very much on the side of, well, we need to address this. And
I don't want to be responsible for the end of deer.
I get it.
And I'm not
Neither
saying,
do I,
I'm not saying that this is like, this is 100% the end. I just am saying if the option is do nothing, which could, I don't care if it's 10% or 80%, lead to the end of deer. If there's an option B that at least guarantees me deer down the line, I'm taking B.
And I don't think anything guarantees deer down the road. That's be my hesitancy to like, if you're gonna take a drastic measure, like to address something, it's like you better be damn sure that it's going to
sterile environment. Like you'd have to actually like build it out and isolate.
Which doesn't really exist.
Nope.
You know, and the hard part about this,
let's be clear too, there's gonna be loss on either side. Like disease is not good, right?
No.
Like, and we don't want to see deer die unnecessarily or, you know what I'm saying? Like it's you're going to have casualties on either model.
We'll throw this out to I think the human,
the COVID thing?
The confidence in humans to overcome, right? Yeah. So
and literally what I'm talking about there, Jeremy, is like you have specimen A, you know what I mean? My mom I was looking toilet seats and like whatever. And I guess there is no like
correlation between toilet seat licking and COVID
no, I was going to say, are there fully unvaccinated people? Like,
yes.
Yeah. And how do they fare physically in the long term?
I don't know.
No idea. Also depends on the environment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Pretty sure that most of the people I was with were not recently.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like regular
from
vaccines.
From like the get-go.
No, like they don't exist.
I'm not talking about COVID
like
at all.
TB vaccines and polio vaccines.
What I'm saying is that all the people that I was with, they weren't born in hospitals. There's no medical around there.
You're talking in the
Bedouin, when I was with the Bedouin tribes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that would be a great example.
There's like nothing out there, I don't think.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I guess what I'm trying to get across, and we have a skewed version of it, like here in the United States, because almost everybody's vaccinated.
Yeah,
with the basic stuff. But take somebody who's like highly exposed, right, to their environment, allowed to just deal with it.
Yep.
Versus like a bubble.
Sure.
A bubble.
A
highly protective situation. Like it seems like 9 times out of 10, like this is better.
Sure. Yeah, I think the interesting thing on the human side too is that in a lot of cases, and I don't know all of them, but Wisconsin being one, I think maybe Minnesota or one of these other ones, the power's been given back to the hunters. This we've had this conversation before, and it's very interesting because people will say, they won't do that. But a lot of the complaint is around the fact that they're handing out tags like candy. It's like, you can have as many tags as you want to kill deer. Well, it's up to Corey's restraint on how many deer he thinks he should kill. That's the problem, is that the human spirit doesn't have restraint. So the issue that these guys have, and why, basically what was a quality deer herd, and this is the fear in Buffalo County, I believe, and the surrounding counties, is that what was a quality deer herd and mature bucks and stuff, that people are just going to be giving out 15 buck tags and they're just going to mow them all down. Well, why not restrain yourself from doing that? It's because not everybody cares about what we're talking about here with mature bucks and habitat and wildlife and year-round balanced age structures as much as the others do.
Well, it's interesting. It comes down to, I think, like incentive. What's the incentive to shoot?
They just want to kill.
Maybe there's some of that, but like, why not just shoot does then?
Because it's not cool to shoot does.
Right. Yeah, because there's some incentive to shoot bucks.
I'm going to shoot a buck.
Yeah.
They don't care if it's a 4-point or a 12-point.
Right. And I think that's, when it comes to like managing a deer herd, that's a problem. It's like, there's not enough incentive to shoot does, which would be beneficial, and there's too much incentive around shoot any antlered buck.
And the CWD aspect of it will be is because bucks have a higher prevalency than does. It's a weird thing because it is in a strange way. The state government is kind of forming this solution, right? And then they're passing the ball to the hunting public to do, not the hunting public, because we actually have Warb on next, but a hunting public community.
All right, Warb.
Yeah, here you go.
Solve this for us.
They're passing this ball to us to say, okay, you guys can go and do whatever you want. And they just kind of sit back. And so if all of a sudden all of these bucks start dying and there's every buck is a 1-year-old, it's like, well, I can't blame us. Like, those are the guys who are choosing to shoot it. Yeah. I mean, it's a real sticky situation.
That is the way of the world, though, right? It's like,
not me.
Nobody wants to take responsibility, and nobody wants to suffer either.
Which is where it's like, I love the accountability side of this if it could happen. Like, and it's, I don't think it's an organization. I don't know if it's the state agency side of things. There's a piss poor communication between the people that are managing regulations and the people who are executing and falling in line with those regulations. There are also a large group, and we've learned this through the podcast, there's a large group of people who don't give two shits about the regulation. They're going to do whatever they want. They're not going to buy a license. They're not going to take a hunter safety course. They're probably not going to even hunt during the season. They'll shoot a deer whenever they want because that's what they think they can do. And that group exists, and it's probably bigger than we all think. I don't know how to process that, but it is.
Let me say this too. I think just like I would err on the side of, the highly exposed, like the ability to overcome, the ability to adapt, is paired with a disbelief that people know what they're doing. Like people in power.
Oh yeah.
It's like, I don't think not you, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I don't know what I'm doing on most of this stuff.
Point to like a government agency or something that's in control. It's like the reason that there's lack of communication is like, you don't know. You don't know. And that's fine. Like,
well, and
nobody knows.
What you say is on record. That's if I have a biggest pet peeve about anything, and dude, obviously what we're talking about here is opinionated,
yeah, it's
right?
All opinions.
Not facts.
Uneducated ones at that.
Yeah. The biggest thing I have a pet peeve with anyone is no one who will put it in writing or record. If you get a phone call and it's like, I just wanted to talk this thing through, that means you didn't want to put it in writing for a reason. Because you don't know, or whatever you say, you don't want me to come back and say, hey, well, you actually said this. And I have a huge pet peeve for that. And I think, to your point, Jared, that is a lot of this miscommunication. Like, think about the way that communication happens in this world. And so these people have a chance to come and talk to this community about CWD, and here's the efforts we're going to do. The moment they do that, they are held accountable for what they said.
Well, and the distrust comes from...
That's why Joe Biden doesn't talk.
Yeah. Well, the distrust comes from, you were so sure. Look at, Fauci is the guy that was, like, in charge of...
Yeah, frankly, I'm surprised he went on record as many times as he did.
He probably didn't have too much of a choice either.
Probably didn't have a choice, but I mean, he's...
Hey, you're the guy, get up there and say those things. Like, this is what you got to do.
And how much better of a position would he be in now? Or, like, all of us would be in, frankly, if he's like, well, listen, we don't know everything. He's like, I don't know.
It.
You can't.
You're the position of authority. Yeah. This goes back to who do you trust?
But that's what I'm saying is nobody knows that.
Sure.
You can... You're just a human.
He just assigned himself, or somebody assigned him as the expert to say, these are the facts.
Right. Well,
there's another level down from that too, where it comes into, even if you come out and you say we're going to educate, we're going to hold accountable. There's still the next level of enforcement.
Oh yeah,
and that's
which is not going to happen.
To your point of like, if there's this whole group that's doing this,
this is not going to happen.
Then this whole conversation it doesn't matter anyway. Yeah, it's like that's cute, guys.
Yeah,
keep doing anything over there. I'm going to just go out here.
Well, to my same question earlier about like what's an example that we handled correctly, and that was. We fixed it. That was it. In the same way, it's like, when has somebody been put into that position of authority that's ever at the end of it not been like in trouble? Or because it's like, well, hey Fauci, you said this. Now it's all these things were wrong and this and that, and yeah, there was right stuff in there. There always is. It seems like we need to allow for like human beings to like be,
and that's where
make mistakes. Like
that. Yeah. Well, it's the
human condition.
Yeah, and that's where this whole aspect of
we want somebody to have the answers, but like the reality is nobody does.
Yeah, and
nobody does,
especially in that situation.
So it's all subjective opinions. It comes down to.
Well, there's science, there's facts, and
don't go around licking each other. We know not to do that. Like there's some.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, it's weird how you're right. There are facts out there, but then every fact has inferences made off of it, which has inferences made off of it, which has, by the time you get 3 rows down, it's bullshit. That's what happens.
And someone's going to be on the line for it if they came out and said something. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, the whole of like, and I mean this is the sad part about the reality is like the fact that we're sitting here, that the people who have been entrusted by the public to be the authorities, to lead this country or this state or whatever into success, when we have no confidence in them, that's a scary situation for all of us to be into, this is not just on the deer, but giant country side of things.
Well, dude, this country rose to power with very little government, right?
Sure.
It was when the people, communicated with one another and wanted to help one another. It's the stronger the government has gotten, the weaker the country, has become.
Agree.
And along with that, we want somebody, aka the government, to have the answer. And the reality is, like, they don't. Nobody can have that.
I'd rather have no answer than a bullshit answer, though.
Sure.
We also have a lot more loud voices.
Yeah, I agree.
With media in general, of things that didn't exist and how long. It's like,
look at us.
I mean, We're just bombarding people with information of things that left and right all day long.
Yeah, there's some really, really rough stuff that's going to, and I mean, that's where, again, inference forms inferences, forms more inference. Like this chain of, this is why everything seems like a lie and we can't trust it, because it's not built on facts. It's built on assumptions, inferences. Down the line to whatever you get, that's COVID, right? That was what trickled down to all of us to COVID. It's like, I mean, there was a time of question in March of 2020 where it's like, holy shit, like, is this thing really going to like kill like everybody?
No doubt.
Like 800 plus people dying in New York City a day. What the Like, dude, I don't want to go. I don't want to be around this shit. And then quickly it was like, wait a minute. Like, what? Okay. Like, what are we doing here? Like, what are these? And, you know, it just, those are the things that started, it started with a fact. There probably were 800 plus people dying a day in New York. I don't think anybody would, but like, from what, why, how did, who, a question would be, and I don't mean this, how many people were dying a day before COVID in New York City?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying,
right?
dude.
And I'm not saying that COVID isn't real, because I do believe it.
It's like I'm not saying CWD isn't real.
Right. It's just when that inference and assumptions start to trickle down, you're left holding something that is like 10% of the facts and 90% of whatever people have said since then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, and there are people, we talk about them, there are people that say, well, this is the truth. It's like, no. Like 10% of that is, but like this other stuff, like where did you come up with that?
The question then becomes what is ultimately truth, and it's people will argue both sides of it and have often valid arguments on both sides.
I think that's where, you know, to a point, you kind of just live your own life.
Well, that's you
control your own thing.
Even with what you guys are talking about, like, leave it, do something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Both,
There's a happy
care.
medium there.
It doesn't mean that neither care. Like both care equally. You know, but it's just a different opinion.
There's a happy medium there.
Yeah, to do it.
I mean, that's how, to your point, that's how this country succeeded, is somebody said red and somebody said white, and then they figured out, like, well, we can put them together, and how about this blue guy come in, and like, now we've got a country. Like, that's how this worked, is there were opposing views, but you work together to come to a common ground on things. Mm-hmm. You know, unlike dictatorship, which is we're told what to do, right? So now take that and think about the situations we just talked about. Sure, shit doesn't feel like red, white, and blue came together here.
I don't know if I told you. I took a buddy down to the Social Security office the other day. I mean,
scary.
And I've taken the same friend to like a different courthouse and stuff. You know who I'm talking about. It's just like, man, that's
depressing.
Dependent on the government is not a position that you want to be in.
No.
Well, I mean, anybody who's in the Appalachians and stuff, you know,
it's like get in a long line for the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's in Appalachian region of this country, you ever drive by a methadone clinic? Mm-hmm. Scary.
Yeah, rough.
And then it's also like, why are we giving them? Why are we doing this?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because it's easier than taking care of them.
Yeah,
scary.
Cheaper.
Yeah, it's a weird factor here, and I know people are gonna be like, "Holy shit, these guys went off the rails."
Yeah, for sure. Well, we definitely did, but
yeah.
I don't know. Like, I'm not like anti-medicine or like I'm the product of like hours of plastic surgery. Like,
it did me so well
multiple times.
Yeah, I'm not like anti-medicine or anything like that, but like, man, it just seems like we screw up a lot of stuff, and like you know, the world is so like.
It's revolving
we're
around
so
money.
resilient. Wildlife is, well, no, I'm just saying like its ability to fix and repair.
Sure.
And it's sustain itself. Like the intervention that we apply seems like it helps, but you know, I think the question is at what cost?
Well, I think I'll leave you with this to that point, and it not disease related, but
this is a more off the rails.
Obviously, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, market hunting was huge. Wiped out the deer population. In order for us to have deer in many parts of this country, we had to take them from other areas and restock them into new areas. Had to have intervention, or there would be no deer there.
Mm-hmm.
Which sounds like it'll probably have to happen again.
But what if all the deer are affected by it? Then you can't. So that's the
yeah.
There has been
I'm not
cases
saying
of it.
Don't ever do anything either.
Well, people are saying don't do anything, and I'm not saying
assess
that it shouldn't
the
be
threat.
assessed. Yeah,
assess the threat, obviously.
But
pretty sure you said don't do anything.
Well, we're talking generally versus
Extreme.
the CW thing.
Right, I know.
Yeah,
but that is the thing. As accurately as possible, assess the threat.
sure,
And then don't overreact.
And I think to the credit of state agencies, I think they have been assessing the threat. I think they have been changing their approach to this stuff. I'm sure Missouri has changed their approach over the last 10 years. We just don't know about it because there's no communication. Communication breaks down, and this is the discussion that ends up in as a result.
That's the other thing too. Is that there has to be mistakes, and there has to be room for forgiveness.
Yeah. Boy, people don't like to admit that they make mistakes. No. I have no problem.
We just had that long conversation yesterday.
Yeah,
and then you learn from them or you don't.
It's called a narcissist.
Yeah.
Everybody makes mistakes, dude. It's the people that aren't willing to admit that they make mistakes that I'm like,
you are the mistake.
Stay away from that person.
Yeah. So there is something. It will be good. Man, nobody likes to talk about CWD. Obviously, we have no problem, and we're not. This is all just. We're just having a discussion.
Well, you know more about it than I do. I've
never personally worked with CWD. Yes, I've been in the deer research facilities and biology side of things for a long, long time, right? But I've never personally. And Emily has a little bit, but not a ton. There are certain people who have lived in it. Strickland has been in it, but Mississippi's not really engulfed in it yet. The people who I think have really been on the ground level of this, I don't think like to talk about it because there probably has been a lot of mistakes and there probably has been a lot of precautionary measures taken. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anybody wants to go on the record and say that. We'll try for everybody listening. Like we'll try to find somebody to really help talk about this stuff. And I would ask that you listen to them with like an open mind. Like don't immediately say, this is bullshit. It's government. Because they've probably been living in this thing for many, many years.
Well, that's the point of a long form, like open format discussion is to find out, to ask those questions and we'll make our own opinions about it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And I'll dig up some. Maybe I don't want to dive into it every freaking podcast but at some point I'll dive into some stats and stuff. I'll pull some research from some of these universities and see to the prevalence in Missouri. I don't know. I would assume it changed, but I don't know. Hopeful, yeah. Hopeful it changed, but I have no idea, and I will say that the most vocal crowd about it is the deer farming community. Take it for what it's worth, because it is if CWD is detected in their facility, right, it is the end of their business, the end of their livelihood. So obviously, I think we kind of all can assume where their position is on CWD and what they believe is going to happen here. So maybe it would be good to have both views on it at some point. Maybe it's a CWD roundtable. I don't know.
Yeah, but even the Missouri thing should give a baseline. We did this. This was the result. This is what we've seen. And
Agreed.
This either worked kind of or a little.
Yeah, it seems like we're missing the most important thing from that study is where do we stand now in terms of prevalence
what did
rates?
It do?
Yeah.
We know what you did.
Because we know the deer are better, but that's unrelated in my opinion.
Sure, yeah.
That's going to happen anywhere you shoot.
The disease side of it, I don't know what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's data out there. The other question is, and we won't see the data, is like how much money did it cost?
I was gonna ask the same.
Sure.
To the point of what we talked about in the past podcast of access, that is a critical threat to hunting right now. Mm-hmm. Lack of access. Mm-hmm. So is CWD. How do you balance it?
Well, and at some point, somebody's got to make decisions, and we have to trust leaders too. Like that's critical.
And it's not going to make everyone happy. It doesn't matter which way you do it. Someone's going to be upset.
It's not. Yeah.
But again, the guy that doesn't care about any of it's still going to go out and just shoot what it wants.
Yeah, if they call Jared and I up and say, hey, listen, CWD was found by your new Illinois farm, we're going to kill every other deer that we see. Mm-hmm. Like, of course, that's not going to make us fucking happy about it. Do we have a say in it? Probably not. It's a weird thing how it all boils down. But no, we should find somebody with better facts that we can at least start to have those discussion around, hey, guys, here's a fact.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to know.
We'll dig somebody up for that. So, anyways, that's it.
Yeah, it's good for me.
Nick, you good?
I'm good.
Looking tan over there, brother.
I think you got tanner. We want to turn down these lights a little bit.
You're looking like you're about to host a talk show or something.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean,
where's Kelly?
You are not the father. Well, Well, cool. Well, we appreciate everybody listening to episode 139 of the HUNTR Podcast, and we'll catch y'all next week.
Later.
Take me